American Comics, Make Up Containment. I Create a Foundation. Chapter 126 Containment 323, Wendigo's Skull. The danger came a little suddenly. Loki originally thought that these savages were just some natives living on the backward planet Blue Star, and he didn't take them seriously at all. In his impression, these Blue Star people are not only weak individually, but also incomparable to the fighters of Asgard in terms of fighting skills. With these rubbish, they are not worthy to use their eyes to look directly at themselves as gods. So he gave the Asgard warriors the right to punish these lowly races without any hesitation. But what he didn't expect at all was that these Blue Star savages not only ignored the Asgard warriors, but even knocked one of them's weapons into the air with ease. Just kidding. This longsword is not comparable to the shoddy carbon steel plate on the Blue Star. This is an advanced weapon made with Asgard's most advanced refining technology. This weapon plus Asgard fighters whose physical fitness is twice that of the Blue Star, whereas Blue Star not invincible. Now you tell him, such a fighter with such a weapon is actually not an ugly all-in-one enemy of Blue Star? He even died at their hands? No. Impossible. It was definitely an accident just now. Seeing the wild crowd getting closer and closer, Loki suppressed the panic in his heart, and ordered to the Asgard warriors beside him angrily, "Soldiers, it was just an accident just now. Now punish these group of people who dare to violate the majesty of the gods." Criminal. As he spoke, Loki bent down to pick up the long sword that the warrior captain had just been knocked into the air, stepped forward, and the giant sword roared. "Warriors of Asgard, come with me. Let these stupid Blue Star people know what the power of the Asgard gods is." "Follow your majesty." Under Loki's order, the morale of Asgard's warriors was once again boosted. They all clenched their weapons tightly and stared at the savages wearing strange white skulls who were getting closer. These savages didn't care about the gazes of Loki and other Asgard fighters. They just approached everyone 10 o'clock with a mace in their hands. The only eyes revealed from the cracks in the antlers' skulls are greed and appetite. Loki doubted his eyes for a moment. He actually saw the appetite in the eyes of those savages just now. Before Loki could react, those savages made a move first. The leader, a slender savage with a height of more than 2 meters, took the lead and rushed to Loki at the front of the team, brandishing a mace. Roaring, accompanied by 3 slamming maces, Loki could only block it with a horizontal sword. After only taking the first hit, Loki understood why the warrior captain's weapon was thrown flying. Loki's tiger's mouth trembled violently, and he almost lost his grip on the long sword in his hand with just such a slap. Before he can relax a little bit, the second time has arrived. Another extremely strong shock. Loki only felt a spasm in his arms, and then he lost all feeling in his arms. Then, the third time the mace came down. Loki just felt terrified in his heart. He knew that he couldn't block the 3 attacks. Will die. Loki looked like he was dropping his mace, only felt that Death God was approaching him. No. He cannot die. He is the future king of Asgard. He is a god. How could he die in a place like Blue Star? He must live. Loki gritted his teeth, and turned his head to look at the warrior captain who was fighting with other antler skull wild men while retreating towards him. He didn't care about the majesty of the gods. First, a donkey rolled to avoid the antler skull wild man's mace. Then, with the support of his already numb arms, he climbed up from the ground in embarrassment and rushed towards the direction of the warrior captain. Phantom. Asgard's warrior captain saw Loki running towards him, and subconsciously wanted to approach Loki to protect his master. What he didn't expect was that just when he was about to touch Loki, who was running away in a panic, the master of Asgard disappeared directly in front of him. Then, he was greeted by another wild man with antlers and skulls. Asgard's warrior captain couldn't react at all, and was hit by the mace directly on the shoulder. He felt as if all the bones in his body had been smashed, and fell to the ground, losing his ability to move. The other fighters on the battlefield panicked when they saw the leader who was brought down and Loki who disappeared, and the moves in their hands began to lose shape. It didn't take long before they were all taken down by Antler Noiri. Looking at all the fallen Asgard warriors, a barbarian with antlers and skulls, who looked the tallest and thinnest, let out a strange moan. Accompanied by this low groan, all the antler skull savages on the field rushed directly to the nearest corpse and started biting frantically. Whether it is Asgard warriors or other antler skull savages, as long as they are dying, they become food for other antler skull savages present. In an instant, blood spattered, and the original battlefield suddenly became a hell on earth. Their warrior captain looked at the indescribable scene in front of him with a face full of shock, and now he pointed to make himself faint. All this must be dreaming. Must be. Whether it's being knocked down by the Blue Stars, or the man-eating monster in front of me, it must be in a dream. Once you faint, you will forget all this. Most definitely. However, no matter how hard the warrior captain fantasizes, the severe pain all over his body reminds him that all this is a terrible reality, not the dream he longed for. A figure came to the side of the warrior captain, who was still trying to struggle and was shocked. Turning his head slowly and looking behind him, he saw a tall and thin savage with antlers and skulls standing behind him. He didn't choose a corpse at random to bite on it like his classmates, but watched him silently. "Are you going to eat yourself?" Their warrior captain of Asgard was gradually filled with despair. He twisted his body frantically, trying to stay away from this monster. Yes, he is not afraid of death. No warrior of Asgard is afraid of death. But this does not mean that his mind is without weaknesses. The Antler Skull Savage looked down at this perfect body in the A's of the blue stars slowly crawling on the ground. He slowly walked up to the warrior captain, strangled his escape intention completely, and then stretched out his hand. He pulled out a skull with antlers similar to his own head behind him. The antler skull looked more dilapidated, older, and more dangerous than the wildling's head. It trembled crazily in the hands of the wild man with antlers and skulls, as if it had discovered a prey that was about to move, and the direction of its trembling was the warrior captain. The warrior captain seemed to have also felt the call of the antler skull. He stared blankly at the skull, and his despairing eyes gradually became calm, dull, and hunger. Ah, what a wonderful feeling that is. All unwanted emotions left him, only hunger. Yes, what do you need so many useless feelings? As long as you are hungry, only hunger is fine. Isn't the meaning of living beings to eat? As for food, it's just humans, right? The warrior captain had climbed up from the ground at some point. He stared frantically at the antler skull in the hands of the savage, and grabbed it directly regardless of whether the savage let go. He pressed down hard on his head. Loki doesn't know how long he's been running. He only stopped running away after he knew that he could no longer feel the group of wild men with antlers and skulls. Finding a random tree and sitting down against it, Loki breathed a sigh of relief. Recalling the scene just now, a wave of anger rose from the bottom of his heart for no reason, and he couldn't help but clenched his fists. He just came to Blue Star less than a day ago, and all the Asgard warriors who followed him were wiped out by a group of savages. When did Blue Star's humans become so strong? Vertical bar no. Loki bit his thumbnail, forcing himself to calm down. The savages just now are definitely not ordinary Blue Stars. Maybe it is a new extraordinary race. Yes, it must be like this. After clearing his mind, Loki stood up straight with the help of the tree trunk beside him tremblingly. As long as I get Mjolnir and take away Thor's authority, I can become the new king of Asgard. At that time, whether it's Blue Star or the group of savages who dared to attack the new king, I will completely destroy them. Loki vented his inner anger, just about to roar out, but heard a strange noise from around. Loki immediately bent down, held his breath, and used the illusion skill again to hide his tracks. He was really a little scared by the group of wild men with antlers and skulls. Zeus felt that the group of monsters came after hearing some noises. After walking cautiously for a while, Loki finally came to the direction where the voice came from. Poking his head out calmly, Loki didn't see the antler skull savages. There were only a group of heavily armed Blue Star soldiers and 10 women in wild expedition costumes. This group of people is Dr. Alexia and the Foundation's nine-tailed fox squad. Loki didn't intend to act rashly, but chose to hibernate here to see what purpose these people had. I saw Alexia holding a flat computer in her hand and flicking it non-stop. She frowned, as if there was some bad information on it. What's the matter, Doctor? A soldier who was also a woman came to Eretisha with a cup of coffee that was just hot, and handed the coffee to her. Thanks. Alexia first thanked, and then said, this should not be far from Containment 323. Isn't that good? It shouldn't be far from the completion of our containment mission. No, Alex shakes his head. According to the materials we collected, this is not the same as the information on Containment 323 given by the President. As Alex said, his face became a little gloomy. Containment 323 here. There seems to be more than one. Chapter 127 Containment, Loki. More than one? Hearing Alex's words, the female soldier couldn't help but frowned. This female soldier is the captain of the nine-tailed fox team of the Foundation. As the Foundation's sea-level combat team, the nine-tailed fox squad's personal strength is not a bit stronger than that of the D-level squad's combat team. Even fighting against the B-level Death Corps, the nine-tailed fox squad has an advantage in one-to-many battles. She took out an energy supplement bar specially provided by the Foundation from the backpack on her waist, tore it open, and sat beside Alexia, saying while gnawing on the energy supplement bar in her hand, that is to say, the original Containment 323 was just an independent individual, but this place has become a gathering place for a group of Containment 323? Well, that's it. Alexia couldn't help rubbing her temples. She felt a bulge in her temples, which made her feel a little uneasy. Obviously, I didn't do this when I was studying the T-virus before. Is there any accident about to happen? Anyway, the President will be coming soon. If there is any trouble, let the President worry about it. After throwing all the problems to Chen Feng, who was still far away with Xfeng, Ally 850 Kazia finally felt better. She put down the coffee cup, picked up the tablet again, and began to explain the Containment 323 to the female soldiers. Specific circumstances. Loki hid not far from the Lakesia camp. His phantom-covered body was next to a big tree. He is confident that even the Blue Star sniper with the best eyes will not be able to detect his existence when his face is close to his face. That's why he dared to hide within 2 or 3 meters of the camp and eavesdrop on their messages. After lying dormant like this for almost an hour, He finally knew some basic information from the conversation between the two in the camp. It turned out that the group of monster savages they met before were not Blue Star natives at all, but a containment called Containment 323, also known as Wendigo's Skull, which even the Blue Stars feared exist like a monster. Containment 323 is the skull of an unknown deer species. It has a general deer perspective, and will respond to a certain degree of auditory, visual and tactile stimuli within 50 meters. This monster generally only vibrates or moves to a small degree, but it will also suddenly swoop up and attack humans who are closer. The most terrifying ability of Containment 323 is that he can exert a certain mental impact on the humans around 15 meters away. As long as people stay in this range for more than a certain period of time, they will have a cannibalistic and violent impulse, and weaken its judgment ability. What's even more frightening is that the person affected by this kind of influence will try to stuff his head into the hole at the back of Containment 323. If he can't get it in, he will hit his head hard against the wall to modify the shape of his head, until it dies or the head can fit completely. Loki couldn't help frowning at this. He really deserves to be the local monster born from the backward Blue Star. Even his behavior is so stupid and lacking in aesthetics. After he obtains the power of Thor, he will destroy all these monsters as soon as possible, so as not to let them pollute his rule. What about stuffing it in? While taking notes, the captain of the Nine-Tailed Fox team asked Kezia that the nature of Containment 323 does not seem to be that scary. Judging from the various incidents experienced by the Foundation's Special Operations team, it is the most common level, and basically does not pose any threat to them. The Containment 323 with the head stuffed in is the complete body, which is Containment 323-1. As Ike said, he stretched and enlarged a picture on the tablet. It was a hand-drawn drawing, and what was drawn on it was a completely alienated human being. Not only were the muscles of the whole body atrophied to the point where the bones could be seen, but the skin was also purple to black, and the teeth in the open mouth were no longer as flat as those of a normal person, but give something close to the beast's spikes. What made the captain of the Nine-Tailed Fox team even more concerned was that the Containment Object 323-1 was holding a seemingly unclear human corpse in his hand, but this corpse looked like nothing in his hand, yet he could feel it completely. Less than that is dragging a grown male. Once a human being successfully carries Containment 323, it will experience a series of physical changes, including but not limited to the loss of muscle, fat, hair and pigment, the abnormal growth of teeth, and the acquisition of physical strength far beyond ordinary people. However, their anti-strike ability is still at the level of ordinary people, and bullets can easily deal with them. Then according to what you said, this kind of containment does not pose a threat to us at all, and staying together in groups in time is just a simple death, so there is no need to care too much, right? The captain of the Nine-Tailed Fox team put away his notebook and put it in the bag on his waist. There were many strange things in that tactical pocket. Although as a soldier of the Foundation, she can't be bound by ordinary people, but it doesn't exclude her from having some personal hobbies, right? Alexia couldn't help shaking his head when he heard the words of the captain of the Nine-Tailed Fox team. We can't underestimate any containment, not to mention that the Containment 323 this time is obviously very different from the data. The Containment 323 in the data has only one individual, but here is an ethnic group. Maybe it has evolved some characteristics far beyond our imagination. In short, don't be careless. I know. The captain of the Nine-Tailed Fox team casually followed Kezia words, and she slowly stood up while supporting her knees. In short, before containing this Containment 323, let's solve the immediate problem first. Well, it's thick to say. As soon as Alexia agreed, he saw the captain of the Nine-Tailed Fox squad whisper into the headset. Do it. Hiding aside, Loki was startled when he heard the sound, and then he heard a tremor in the trees above. Then a huge net suddenly opened out of thin air, covering him directly. Loki yelled in his heart that it was not good. He didn't know how this woman found him, but if he was caught here, both the face of the Asgard royal family and his status as a god would be treated as a joke. He rolled low, and quickly avoided the direction of the giant net, but before he could breathe a sigh of relief, the other four nets came directly from all directions around him. With just a snap, Loki was tightly entangled by the four nets, unable to move anymore. How could he be caught by the blue stars just like that? Loki still wanted to struggle, and the only hand that could move a little moved towards the dagger by his thigh. The power grid that was just restraining him just now was suddenly wrapped by a strong electric current, and all struggling movements were forcibly interrupted, leaving only weak shaking and ridiculous wailing after being affected by the electric shock. His vision was definitely dispelled by the electric shock. Why do you think? The leader of the Nine-Tailed Fox team and Kezia wandered over to Loki, who had been electrocuted into a quill head. It's just the two of us here? Chapter 128 The Slicing Maniac. Dr. Questia. The battle between Chen Feng and the wildlings with antlers did not progress very quickly. These staghorn savages looked very tall, but their combat effectiveness was not very strong, and their defense ability against firearms was also close to zero. The reason for slowing down the battle is that Chen Feng wants to exercise Thor and the others' mentality in the face of abnormal containments, and the second is that some missing persons who were originally on the plane appeared among these savages. He also seemed to have lost his mind, wearing the same antler helmet as the savage, and attacking them with sticks and stones. He wondered if these people could return to normal after the antlers were removed. Even if they can't reply, at least take a whole body back to their family. In a not-so-intense battle, all the antlers savages wearing bark and weeds were killed, and the antlers savages in normal clothes were knocked down by the electric shock of the taser gun. Chen Feng came to a savage with antlers, looked at his slightly trembling body due to the electric shock, squatted down, and put his hand on his antler helmet. Congratulations to the commander for discovering the abnormal containment object 323 Wendigo's skull. Note that this object has been alienated into a cluster. After the mother body is contained, rewards will be issued. Actually alienated into a group? Chen Feng was a little surprised in his heart, but the expression on his face didn't change. Unless the containment of 323 was alienated into an order of magnitude like the interstellar swarm, it wouldn't be the slightest threat to him. The antler skull covering the head was removed, and the trembling airplane passenger collapsed on the ground after a more violent twitch. Chen Feng stretched out his hand to test it, but he was already out of breath. Sighing, Chen Feng stood up and said in a deep voice to Phil Coulson beside him, "It's hopeless." Phil Coulson's expression froze when he heard this, and he turned around and gave the execution order to the other agents. Chen Feng didn't want to watch the next scene. He came to Xfeng's side in a few steps. "These are alienated abnormal containment objects 323. Please send their information to Dr. The original 323 intelligence told her and the Nine-Tailed Fox team to deal with it carefully, and we will rush there as quickly as possible to reconcile with them. Okay, it's going to be a long day." Just when Chen Feng was about to issue a task to the people around him to notify the federal government to take care of the remains of the victims, the voice of the system suddenly sounded in his mind again. "Congratulations to the commander for completing the containment of the evil god Loki of MSCP-003. And the generals of the system will be released soon. The commander has taken in MSCP-003 Evil God Loki, obtained the authority of the Flame Law, the Evil God Flame, and automatically controls all the Evil God's Flame-type psychic powers. The commander contained the third abnormal containment item in the American comics world, and received 100 council points. The Foundation has performed very well recently. Please continue to work hard, Commander. Rich rewards are waiting for you. Chen Feng's expression suddenly became extremely strange. Loki, why did he come to Blue Star? Could it be that he came after Thor? It's just that he was taken in before I saw him. Who did it? Miss 2B? No, if this kind of thing really happened, she would be the first to report it to us. Could it be some agents or special operations teams of the Foundation? No way. Loki is a god no matter what, and he has not been weakened as a god. His combat power is more than a star and a half stronger than Thor without Mjolnir. Besides, Loki is known for his cunning. Even if he can't beat him, his running skills are top-notch. A master who is caught by SHIELD and can take advantage of the opportunity to escape is not so easy to be caught. It can't be our Laequestia. If that's the case, Loki reckons some have suffered. Thinking of the woman's exclaiming crazy scientific attitude, Chen Feng immediately said again to Xfeng beside him, "Notify everyone. We will be on the road immediately after we leave the victims' information to the Federation. Reunite with Dr. Laequestia as quickly as possible." As Chen Feng spoke, he couldn't help showing an unconcealable smile on the corner of his mouth. "Otherwise we may miss a peerless show." Loki swears that if he has the chance to leave alive, he will never come to Blue Star again in his life. Whether it is Mjolnir or Thor's authority, no matter what temptations can make him set foot on the dangerous place of Blue Star again. First, when they first entered Blue Star, they were ambushed by the monster named Containment 323. None of the elite soldiers of Asgard survived, and they were probably eaten up by the monsters. Furthermore, I finally met two native Blue Star women. I originally planned to hold them hostage after some investigation, and let them lead me out of this dangerous place to find the nurse who was punished to Blue Star. After reaching Mjolnir, I will complete the goal. Leave now. But who would have thought that these two women are not fuel-efficient lamps? Zero ask for flowers. They actually used MSCP-323 intelligence data to seduce themselves, so that they would not dare to act rashly, and then used a wave of sneak attacks when he was not paying attention. That sneak attack was so fast, he didn't react at all. Otherwise, according to the strength of his Asgard Protoss, he would definitely be able to kill all the humans here. Instead of being tied up like Songtsai and slaughtered like rice dumplings. Let go of me, you stupid Blue Star people. You will regret what you did today. Loki twisted his body frantically, trying to break free from the restraints of the restraints. It's just that this restraint belt is a special product of the Foundation. According to Yukike's calculations, even the Green Titan Hulk can't break free, let alone Loki. who is not good at strength. I am the royal family of Asgard. You will destroy Asgard's relationship with human beings if you treat me like this. Our army will crush Blue Star, and you will become Blue Star's sinners. Aletheia came to the noisy Loki with a blank face, holding a green spiral reagent that looked very bad in one hand, and an extra long needle in the other hand. It's noisy. Aletheia evacuated the solution in the reagent with a needle, and put the empty reagent tube in a storage box beside him, then tried to insert the needle into Loki's body. How could Loki make her get what she wanted? He doesn't know what this reagent is, but it must be something bad looking at the green color. If there is a mutation in his body or something, he has nowhere to cry. Aletheia was irritated by Loki's writhing movements. She stretched out her hand to press a button by the window, only to see a burst of crackling electric arcs, and Loki, who was electrocuted again, finally calmed down. Sure enough, it's better to be quiet. Aletheia held the needle. His eyes swept across Loki's emaciated body with fascination. A royal family of Asgard ... and a god. This is the most beautiful body structure I have ever seen. Flesh and bone strength several times higher than that of human beings, arm fractures, multiple bones in a sternum, and body activity that can be recovered in only a few hours after being shocked by 120 volts. 1. I believe that as long as I study your body thoroughly, I will definitely get a perfect solution to the president's problem. Under Loki's desperate gaze, Alekei's needle silently pierced into the middle claw of his body. Chapter 129 Loki, if you're one step late, I'll send it. Loki watched helplessly as the extremely ominous-looking green reagent was injected into his body. He didn't know what the woman was injecting him with, but the transparent green color gave him an extremely ominous feeling. This green is greener than his evil flame. Do you think he cannot panic? Could it be that he, the future royal family of Asgard, the god standing on top of the world, is going to fall on this backward and ignorant planet like Blue Star? Or die at the hands of the woman? Loki couldn't help mourning silently in his heart, praying for a miracle to happen. As for those mechanical arms dangling around his body, and other needles constantly inserted into his body, he no longer wanted to care about them. If I can miraculously survive this time, I will definitely trample this woman and her so-called chairman 863 under my feet, humiliate me severely, and then throw the two of them to the bottom. Go to the barbarian planet, and watch those disgusting and inferior creatures tear their flesh, bite their brains, and then burn them into ashes, completely dissipated in the universe. Loki silently cast what he thought was the most vicious curse on Aletheia, who was walking around the computer, and Chen Feng, who was still on the road, even though he was still unable to move. It's not right. Aletheia definitely didn't know what Loki was masturbating in his heart, and even if she knew, she wouldn't care. A containment object that was easily placed by the nine-tailed fox team of the Foundation. It would be extremely difficult to hurt her, who has stayed in the Foundation all year round, let alone the president, who is a one-man army. Aletheia stared at the data on the computer, his eyebrows frowned. Why is the T-virus injected directly into his body without any reaction? Is it directly killed by the immune system in the body, or is the dose too small to produce a response? Beep beep. There was a sudden sound from the tablet at hand, and Aletheia immediately picked it up. Finally there is a reaction. But after reading the content on the tablet, Aletheia's eyebrows frowned even tighter, like a towel wringing out water. It only moderately improves the body activity and physical strength. The improvement efficiency is less than 1%. Aletheia cast a glance at Loki, who was playing dead on the operating table. No sign of zombification either. After pondering for a while, Aletheia entered his conclusion on the tablet. In other words, Asgard people are completely immune to the T-virus. No, the science is rigorous. Deleted the words on the tablet. Aletheia re-entered. The gods of Asgard, the abnormal containment MSCP-003 Loki is completely immune to the T-virus. The status of the common samples of the Asgard race is unknown, and the status of the samples of other gods is unknown. More test samples are needed. Loki heard Aletheia's murmurs from the side, and finally heaved a sigh of relief secretly. It seems that the green reagent has no effect on himself as a god, but I just hope that this woman will stop using other tricks on him. It's just that Loki's fantasy didn't last for more than 3 minutes, and Aletheia, who had just put down the tablet, walked over from nowhere with another test tube. Loki's eyes widened when he saw the test tube in Aletheia's hand. What the hell? And after he saw the contents of the test tube clearly, he who originally planned to play dead to the end completely gave up his reason, and roared towards Aletheia, who was approaching. No. Don't come here. You crazy woman. Don't let what you hold near me. You can't let this ugly thing enter my body. You are an insult to the gods of Asgard. I curse you. You will definitely suffer the cruelest punishment in Asgard. Your soul will be scorched by full flames forever. Get out. As if Aletheia couldn't hear Loki's hysterical roar, he shook the test tube in his hand calmly and muttered to himself. Since the T-virus doesn't work, and the G-virus is not at hand, let's try this new product. In the test tube, a dark grey worm slowly squirmed. Containment, a parasite that evolved from the progenitor virus, have an effect on the gods? Alaixia's eyes gradually became fanatical. You want to know too, Mr. Loki? Seeing the test tube getting closer and closer to him, Loki's brain has lost its ability to respond. Completely blank, he could only bite his teeth tightly to prevent Aleixia from opening his teeth. He is really a stubborn person. Aleixia raised his eyebrows. Obviously I have suffered so much, but I still refuse to give up. Say it, and put your hand on the button on the side of the operating table. As long as she clicks, Loki will be clicked a third time, and all his struggles will be in vain. But just as her fingers were about to press down, a cough suddenly interrupted her movements. Cough cough. Aleixia turned round, and saw Chen Feng standing at the door of this temporary laboratory with Xfeng, playing with Loki on her operating table with a playful face. Master President. Aleixia showed a rare look of surprise on her cold and calm face. After she put the parasite test tube back into the refrigerator, she came to Chen Feng in 3 steps at a time. My lord, I have a lot to report to you. We found the gathering point of the anomalous Containment 323, and also captured Loki, who claimed to be the god of Asgard, along the way. Besides, hearing that Aleixia, who usually doesn't talk much, suddenly became so eloquent, Chen Feng could only listen with a smile. It wasn't until she said that her attempt to inject Loki with the T-virus had no effect, and she was about to replace it with a more powerful parasite but was interrupted by his arrival. Aleixia finally ended her report. In other words, is this valley the gathering place for the abnormal Containment 32? Have you seen 32? Chen Feng sorted out Aleixia's information and asked his own questions. No, Alaik 5.6 Sire shook his head. Before we had time to go in and explore, we found Loki spying on the side of the camp, and then we caught him first. Smoothly, Chen Feng almost couldn't hold back his laughter. This is probably the most unlucky time for Loki as a slippery man. If he hadn't been facing Nine-Tailed Fox Squad, a special operations team mainly made up of women, mainly hiding and infiltrating, he would not have been caught so easily. It can only be said that everything is arranged by fate. Let go of him. Chen Feng pointed to Aleixia at Loki on the operating table. He will be useful for our next operation, and it's not good to just tie him up like this. Son, President. Since it was Chen Feng's order, even if Aleixia was reluctant, he would definitely execute it perfectly. She pressed a few times casually on the operating table, and the belt that was enough to bind Hulk retracted instantly and disappeared. Chapter 130 Thor, Loki, how are you doing? Are you angry? After Loki was unshackled by Alaik, he didn't choose to escape immediately. It's not that he didn't want to hold the so-called president hostage and run away the moment the restraint belt came into contact with it, but before he could make a move, a violent Chinook energy rushed straight to his skycap, shattering his idea of running away. It's spotless. The direction of this Chinook coercion is from that president. If Loki has not miscalculated, the strength of this Chinook energy is not even weaker than that of his own father. How terrifying is this foundation? A female researcher can capture gods with the equipment in her hand, but the president who suddenly appeared has psychic powers that are not weaker than the current god king of Asgard. Is Blue Star already such a scary place? Suppressing the fear and agitation in his heart, Loki forced his body, which was oppressed by spiritual energy, to be immobile, not to shake too much, pretending to be calm, and cracked the corner of his mouth at Chen Feng, who was still smiling and looking at him. I said, Man 09, are you the president she talks about? That's right, it's me. You can call me Chen Feng, but they prefer to call me President or Master President. Chen Feng took a few steps towards Loki, endured the discomfort in his body and doubled his Chinook output. Welcome to Blue Star, the evil god Loki. As soon as Chen Feng finished speaking, Loki, who was about to speak ironically, felt an overwhelming Chinook power pouring towards his face. This feels like a lonely boat challenging the sea, facing the thunder with skill. Loki, who just sat up, slammed back onto the operating table with a bang. This time, it wasn't an electric shock or a physical shock, but a spiritual one. Loki's mind was shocked. He realized that he still underestimated the president of this foundation. This psychic power is not only comparable to that of his father Odin, it is not an exaggeration to say that it is far superior. Loki estimated that if Odin and the president of the foundation were to confront each other head-on, he even felt that the possibility of Odin's failure was far greater than that of the president of the foundation. This is the effect of psychic suppression. When the gap in psychic power is too large, no matter how much your fighting skills, resourcefulness, etc. surpass the opponent, he can beat you to your knees and sing conquest. The so-called use of force to defeat cleverness is exactly like this. Loki at the moment can't wait to slap himself a few times. You said he has nothing to do, and why did he come to this Blue Star? Anyway, Thor will return to Asgard sooner or later, and then lay an ambush on his way back. Getting off Mjolnir is much better than being unable to fight back after being humiliated at Blue Star and having to suffer obediently. But how did he think that Blue Star would suddenly have a foundation and anomalous containment objects? In his eyes, Blue Star is still a 0.7 level civilization whose technology relies on boiling water and fights rely on backward kinetic weapons. Let you not do a good job of research before you go. Let you not do a good job of research before you go. After secretly slapping himself a few times in the heart, Loki suddenly felt that coercion on his body disappeared. Raising his head, Chen Feng had already come to his side, smiled and reached out to help him up, and gave him a bottle of coffee with a strange logo on it. Maybe the president of this foundation is unexpectedly a good person. Loki quickly poured himself a sip of coffee, suppressing the strange thoughts in his mind. Nonsense. He doesn't have the Stockholm Syndrome of the Blue Stars, so he won't be overwhelmed by such a small trick. He will escape sooner or later. Find Thor, snatch Thor's authority, then return to Asgard, and finally completely cut off the connection between Asgard and Blue Star, and never communicate with each other forever. No matter how powerful you are as the president of the Foundation, without space-time coordinates and space portals, you will never be able to find out where Asgard is. Seeing that Loki fell into his own fantasy again, Chen Feng couldn't help but sighed. This silly child was too stimulated today, and he can't help but fall into his own world and can't extricate himself. In order to ease Loki's current mental state, Chen Feng decided to play a bigger one. Serious illness requires strong medicine, right? Chen Feng glanced at Xfeng beside him. Xfeng immediately understood, turned around and waved towards the door of the temporary laboratory. Thor walked in following Xfeng's greeting with some doubts. When he saw Loki coming down from the operating table, his eyes widened instantly, and he opened his mouth involuntarily to shout, "Why are you such a thing?" Loki was also taken aback by the sudden familiar voice. He looked up, and saw the bearded man he hated most in his life was pointing at himself with an unbelievable look on his face. Loki's bad taste somehow emerged again. He has an inexplicable emotion towards Thor. This emotion makes him can't help but taunt him every time he meets Thor, just like now. So, what's the matter? My dear brother, why can't I appear on Blue Star? Is this your private domain? Or Loki narrowed his eyes at Thor. Where is someone punished? Thor's forehead felt hot when he was stimulated by Loki's words, and he almost punched him. It's just that he came to this world earlier than Loki, and was educated in love by Chen Feng earlier, so his character is calmer than when he was in Asgard, and he also learned to think deeply. You're not here from Mjolnir, are you? Loki's pupils shrank involuntarily. He didn't expect Thor, who was originally reckless and impulsive, to see through the purpose of his trip in such a short period of time, and it was still under the condition of being stimulated by him. In the past, if the two didn't fight on the spot, it would count as Thor's temper as good. That's right, I'm here for your baby. Now that the purpose has been seen through, Loki doesn't plan to hide it anymore, because you don't deserve it. Being provoked by Loki again, Thor didn't choose to make a move. Instead, he snorted lightly and said to Chen Feng, who was beside him, "Mr. President, it seems that Mjolnir is indeed a correct choice to be contained by you." After all, he imitated Loki's eyes before and squinted at him. Otherwise, to be looked at by a greedy and evil scum of Asgard is an insult to it. Being ridiculed by Thor's words, Loki almost couldn't hold back. However, before he could counterattack, a roar suddenly resounded around the entire base. Then, there was a strange vibration from the ground, and along with the vibration, the valley made a strange sound. Chapter 131 Alai Quest Asia's Purpose, Broken God. The shock was extremely sudden. Under this level of shock, there were no birds screaming, no animals fleeing in a panic, and there was no sign of the earth's light that must come out before a violent earthquake. That's how it started. Chen Feng's face sank like water, and with a wave of one hand, a shield generated by Shinnok energy protected everyone in the entire camp. Pack up the important items in the camp as soon as possible. This earthquake is not an ordinary earthquake, and I'm not sure how long it will last. We need to go to the plains as soon as possible. Alexia calmly issued orders to the team members in the camp. She is an extremely calm scientist, and she will not panic when she is beside Chen Feng. He gave his orders and went to finish his work. You two go too. Alai cast a glance at the two brothers Thor and Luigi, who were clearly about to lose their balance but were still fighting coldly with their eyes. I know what you two represent to the chairman and the foundation, but this is not a reason for you two not to do anything. Alexia pointed at Loki. Especially you, don't look at me like a child and a mother. If you don't want the parasites I prepared to feed you to leak, just obediently report to me that refrigerator. Otherwise, I swear, leak a parasite, and I will inject all the viruses I have developed into your body. Originally, Loki wanted to kill Alexia with his eyes. Hearing the latter sentence, he immediately shivered. He hurriedly ran over to pick up the refrigerator that the scary female scientist pointed at, not even caring about the Cold War with Thor. Up. Thor looked in amazement at the obedient Loki, who was managed by Alai. He had never seen Loki so obedient. Even in front of Father God Odin, his obedience was just a superficial effort. But facing this woman, Loki really obeyed. If he had a recording device or something, he really wanted to record it and take it back to enjoy it. This is a rare scene in 1,000 years. And you too. Just after training Loki, Alexia's firepower turned to Thor. Go and help me pack up all those hardware devices and move them out. Remember to handle them with care. Alexia didn't care about Thor after finishing speaking, but carried another reagent box by himself. and left the temporary laboratory at an extremely fast and steady pace under the violent shaking of the earthquake. Seeing the resolute Alekia, Thor couldn't help but whistled, turned around and packed up the equipment in the laboratory. The shaking lasted for an entire hour to the surprise of Chen Feng and others, although the intensity of the tremor was close to level 8 according to the detection equipment. The entire rainforest did not suffer any obvious damage. That is to say, except for some fallen leaves and fruits, there is not even a single tree in this rainforest, and a small hill was affected by this tremor, including their camp. Strange. Chen Feng glanced at the team members who were counting the supplies in the camp, and couldn't help muttering to himself. Why is this happening? Could it be the ghost of some abnormal containment? Before Chen Feng had time to call out the system in his heart, another low chime resounded through the valley to interrupt his thoughts. This low hum is like the feeling of gears gnashing and magnified thousands of times, which makes people's scalp tingle. Fortunately, there are not specially trained agents in the camp, even the Protoss of the alien civilization, and Alekia, who has the poorest physical fitness, reacted immediately, put on earplugs and opened his mouth at the same time. After another hour of torment, the humming sound slowly subsided. Loki shook his head, and pulled out his humming ears. What the hell has become of your blue star? It's an abnormal containment and an earthquake with loud thunder and rain. Now there is another earth cry. Are you guys going to end the world? If it's not handled well, it will indeed turn into the end of the world. Alekia walked in front of Chen Feng. Master President, I have something to report to you. Chen Feng was a little surprised. Didn't you finish the report before? Alekia shook his head. Those are just additional situations I encountered in this valley. I actually came here for another purpose this time. I originally planned to report to you after sorting out the relevant reports. After glancing at the valley that looked a little weird due to the earth noise and the earthquake, Alekia continued. Now it seems that it is safer to report in person. We don't have so much time to waste. Chen Feng nodded, motioning for her to continue. Alekia didn't have any hesitation, and handed the tablet that he had been holding in his arms to Chen Feng. The purpose of my coming this time is actually to contain the broken god. Chen Feng was taken aback when he heard Alekia's words, and then asked in surprise, the broken god? Loki on the side saw Chen Feng, who is the chairman of the foundation, showing an unbelievable expression. He casually pulled the captain of the nine-tailed fox team who passed by him, and asked the woman who had captured him, broken? What is the god? The captain of the nine-tailed fox team stopped, thought for a while, and explained to Loki. The broken god is the supreme divine existence worshipped by the Church of the Broken God. He is the god in charge of machinery and electronics. His image is a huge human form composed of clockwork and gears. Order and law are woven on the abyss, and every law of physics enables all things to operate. Teaching human logic and rationality is the source of endless wisdom and knowledge. In many settings, a mechanic hammer is equipped as a weapon. Nearly omniscient and omnipresent, spread across countless, did the dimension second nothing. Loki also showed consternation. So the broken god is a kind of divinity, and it's especially powerful? The captain of the nine-tailed fox team nodded. Yes, it's not so powerful, but it's a pity it's already broken. But there are many theories about how it broke, and none of them agree with everyone at the moment. Loki chewed on Captain Nine-Tailed Fox's words over and over again. The more he thought about it, the more his heart beat. The supreme divinity, created the universe, is almost omniscient and omnipotent, and spreads across countless dimensions. Isn't this something infinitely stronger than Thor's power? If you have obtained this divinity, wouldn't you be eligible to rule the universe? Loki's heart heats up. What Thor authority, what Mjolnir, is not important now. This broken god's divinity. He must get it. Chapter 132, Stage Mission begins. Loki's cognition collapses. Chen Feng naturally didn't know about Loki's little thoughts. But even if he knew, he wouldn't bother to care about it. Just kidding. As far as the level of the broken god is concerned, it may not be enough to pull the entire Asgard people here with him. Loki also wants to obtain the highest divinity of the broken god. Even if this divinity is broken, it is completely impossible. Chen Feng has other things he cares about more. Just when Alekia uttered the words broken god, his system was activated. Ding! Trigger the god-level containment mission. Contain the broken god? Task trigger stage 1. Investigate the contained mechanical virus. An alien Church of the Broken God spaceship loaded with the containment mechanical virus crashed in the middle of the Sonoran Desert, causing abnormalities. Please go to the target location immediately for deployment. After completing the mission of Level 1, the commander will gain the command of a Space Marine Blood Raven Company, the support of 3 priests of Mechanicus, and the right to mobilize all remaining Nine-Tailed Fox units. When Chen Feng heard the system's words, he even felt like he stopped breathing. Just kidding. Contain the broken god? That is one of the most terrifying existences among the 27 abnormal containment objects. Not to mention destroying and resetting the universe at will. But just destroying Blue Star, without the need for the broken god to take action, and its followers can give Blue Star's ashes away in minutes. Fortunately, The second sentence of the system came in a timely manner, otherwise Chen Feng would have to start thinking about whether the Wandering Earth project is reliable, or whether it is more practical to leave a will for himself. Has it been split into stage tasks? Chen Feng was a little relieved. After the task of containing the broken god was divided into stage tasks by the system, the overall difficulty did not decrease, but he could get a corresponding improvement before completing a stage. Chen Feng waited until the last stage. I believe that I will have the strength and cards to rival the broken god. If he is asked to fight against the god of brokenness now, he may choose to give up the mission directly and fly to the corner of the universe with the foundation to develop wretchedly. When the time comes, will the god of brokenness find him first, or will he lead the team to fight back? Broken god. With a calm mind, Chen Feng rearranged the main tasks of the system. First of all, a spaceship of the Church of the Broken God will crash in the middle of the Sonoran Desert, Ajk, and the mission objective of the Level 1 section containing the mechanical viruses leaked from this spaceship. Chen Feng is grateful for the order he issued in advance, which makes only Foundation people exist in the entire Sonoran Desert. It is not a good thing for ordinary people to be infected with mechanical viruses. Snowwind. Chen Feng turned his head and said to Xfeng, who was always following him, "Let the people in the camp do the final finishing work quickly. Don't rush to start. I'm going out to find a place to deploy the void armament. Don't act without authorization before I come back." "Yes, Chairman." Seeing Xfeng pretending to give a military salute, Chen Feng couldn't help but smiled and rubbed her head, and after messing with her beautiful hair, he strode away from the camp. Looking at the back of Chen Feng leaving, and then glanced at the busy Foundation personnel in the camp, Loki snorted softly and muttered in a low voice, "It seems that the Foundation, who is the leader, is allowed to act alone. It's not very formal. If something happens to their president, wouldn't there be no place to cry? It's really an organization built by a group of weak mortals, and it's really naive enough. You underestimate the people of these foundations and their president." Thor, who was helping to carry the supplies behind Loki, heard Loki's soft taunt, and he couldn't help but reply, "Anyone here? The probability of winning at your level is less than 10%. Thor put down the items in his hands, came to logic, and condescendingly pointed his finger at Loki's narrow and thin chest compared to him. "Don't underestimate any of these people by thinking they are mortal. Yes, they may be far weaker than you in frontal combat, but your arrogance is not enough to be an enemy to any of them. You don't know how powerful and terrifying the enemies they have faced, but I know. I once faced a monster numbered as abnormal Containment 973, and almost died at its hands. But these mortals, not only did they successfully rescue me, they even defeated and contained the abnormal Containment Object 973. So, don't underestimate any of the Foundation ''s. No, all of them." Humans have a saying that is right, and I think you should remember it too. That is, what destroys oneself is often not strength, but arrogance. It was rare for Thor to be so forceful, and Luigi didn't make any angry expression or response at all. What Chiyoa said made him unable to calm down for a while, and he actually forgot how to express his thoughts. And Thor paused for a moment, then continued with a serious expression. "As for their president, I believe that you, who are the gods of Asgard like me, should also feel the horror of his spirit." As he spoke, there was a hint of fear in Thor's eyes. Loki was even more surprised. He could still see fear in the eyes of his big brother, who is synonymous with force and impulsiveness. "Is the gentle-looking president so scary?" "With your own witnesses, I can only tell you that the powerful spiritual power is only a small part of his own terror." Loki twitched the corners of his mouth, showing a smile that was uglier than crying. "Don't be kidding. With that psychic level, how could there be someone scarier than that?" Loki didn't know whether it was comforting or deceiving himself, but before he finished speaking, a voice that resounded through the sky overwhelmed his words. "Void armed in place, enter combat deployment mode." Then, the sky around the camp twisted. Countless light curtains projected from the distorted sky, as if gods descended to the earth. Loki looked into the distance, and he could vaguely see that among these light curtains, 10 girls in full armor, wearing far more advanced weapons and equipment than the current Blue Star humans, landed not far from the camp. This is when he suddenly understood that the distortion in the sky is not simply a change in the weather, but an optical transformation brought about by the real space distortion. That is to say, this president actually has the ability to open the space door and summon troops. In the case of extremely terrifying personal strength, he still has the ability to project troops across space. One person becomes an army, but that's all there is to it. Chapter 133. The whole army sets out. The weather in New York is exceptionally nice today. Cloudless, sunny, with a humidity of 55% and a slight wind of level 3. Neither dry nor too humid. It is a relatively rare good weather in this city. In this kind of weather, you should turn on the top stereo, listen to an elegant and light blues, and then use the hand-ground coffee powder that cannot be bought on the market to make a cup of coffee with a strong aroma. Feel the breeze outside the window, and breathe in the coffee, the fragrance, the music that the listener dances happily in his own brain. There is no more comfortable life than this. Nick Fury thinks so. He hasn't been in such a good mood for a long time. Originally, Although he has been busy with the establishment of SHIELD, there is always a little time every day to relax, listen to his favorite music, drink a cup of favorite drink, so that his busy brain and body can get proper rest. But since that Chen Feng appeared, his life and work have become a mess. Endless work, endless storage, endless strange things happened one after another, so he had to force himself to give up the last little rest time every day, and put all his experience has been devoted to the support of the foundation. Definitely, not that he doesn't enjoy the job. When he decided to commit himself to SHIELD, he gave his all to all mankind. But it doesn't mean that I don't have any spare time and hobbies, right, Chen Feng? Even the latest generation of artificial intelligence AI can't withstand your tossing. And now, Nick Fury has finally found a chance to touch fish. Because Chen Feng is not here, he is on a business trip. I can finally rest for a few days. Lock the door of the director's office, turn on the music you like, make agent coffee from the foundation, and look at the scenery of New York from the office. Oh, what a wonderful life it is, especially this coffee. Where did the foundation get such a good coffee? Is it instant? Next time, Chen Feng must give himself a few more boxes as compensation for his labor. Taking a deep sip of the refreshing aroma of the coffee in the cup, Nick Fury slightly stretched out his lips, ready to taste the coffee that is already ranked number one in his heart unconsciously. Exclamation mark. The door of the director's office flew out. Nick Fury spilled his coffee all over his suit. Natasha Romanoff, you better give me an explanation. Nick Fury rage jumped up from the director's office chair, ignoring the boiling hot coffee, and rushed in front of Black Widow within a few days. This is the most expensive and best suit I have. If you can't explain to me why you took this big green guy and knocked down my door, I will definitely send you to the foundation to do research for them sample. And it's 100 days. With one hand pointing to the side Hulk, the other kept pointing at Black Widow's shoulder. Nick Fury's anger had already broken through his celestial cap, and his roar could be heard clearly by the entire SHIELD. Black Widow was very calm. She took out a document from behind her and handed it to Nick Fury. If you calm down, just take a look at this. After finishing speaking, he dragged Hulk, who had just surrendered to SHIELD, beside him, and left the director's office without looking back. Oh, right. Black Widow stopped in his footsteps, and said to Nick Fury with his back, the next time you want to enjoy your personal time, remember to turn down the volume. The sound insulation of your office door is too good and there is a problem with the doorbell. You can't hear what you call outside. Nick Fury, who was a little out of breath, sat back on his exclusive director's office chair to calm himself down. Picking up the file that Black Widow stuffed for himself, Nick Fury just glanced at it for the first time, as if he had played an ice bucket challenge. His boiling brain instantly cooled down. Picking up the mobile phone on the table, Nick Fury dialed a number without thinking. Notify SHIELD that there are no agents with important tasks on hand, and the highest transfer order is issued. Move all the troops that can move. Seeking flowers. Humanity is likely to perish. Earth Defense Force EDF Dongwang Division. On Li Qingshan's desktop was a document that was exactly the same as the one Nick Fury had received. He is the Commander-in-Chief of the EDF Dongwang Division of the Earth Defense Force, and has the right to control all the troops of the EDF Dongwang Division. The moment he received this document, he ordered to stop all plans of the EDF Dongwang Division. Whether it was on a drill or on a mission, even the flight crew who were halfway through the sky were recalled to the base by him. Because this document is really terrible. If its content is true, then mankind will face the most severe challenge in history. And there is only one chance. Once it fails, human civilization will turn into dust and disappear into the universe. Investigation report on the god of brokenness descending on Blue Star and confirmation documents of the first batch of mechanical viruses. Whispering this extremely awkward file name in a low voice, Li Qingshan only felt that he had two big brains. The Earth Defense Force EDF has not been established for a long time, and its armed forces have not reached its peak at all. Many black technologies obtained from the Foundation are still being analyzed and digested. Taking games as an example, they are still fighting against the abnormalities on the Earth stage of development. But now you suddenly tell him that there is a wall hanging with a full-level god outfit at the beginning. What do you want them to do? Just surrender. But the reality is not a game after all, and it doesn't mean that you can reopen it if you surrender. Judging from the summary of the broken god and the mechanical virus in the document, the damage of the mechanical virus is still within the scope of taking over. But even if the broken god moves his finger, there is no possibility of human civilization being reopened. Its coming must be strangled in the cradle. With a clear idea, Li Qingshan picked up the special phone on the desk and took down a red button. Contact me with the other EDF Theater Command commanders and ask them to trigger all troops to go to the Sonoran Desert for martial law. Don't talk to me about authority issues. If they receive that document, they will know what must be done now. Begging. Chapter 134. Assailants on the way forward. After having the basis of summoning the Void Armor once, Chen Feng, who used it again, is even more handy. In a blink of an eye, a tactical human figure of the size of an infantry regiment came to his side and surrounded him heavily. Master President, Xfeng's message came over. Somehow, Chen Feng couldn't hear a trace of emotion in Xfeng's words, and reported to him like an ordinary ASHIELD. Hydra, Earth Defense Force CDF and government officials of major countries have all received Miss Alakesia's investigation report on the God of Broken God and the mechanical virus. At present, all organizations and countries have started large-scale deployment of troops. Both directions are in the outskirts of the Sonoran Desert. This tone is really wrong. It would always be sweet and greasy before. Why is it so cold now? Then to be just past the news of September 83 inches. All members of the Euro army are preparing for battle at the first level, and all the orbital fleets that can be mobilized have been put on standby. All the armed forces in our hands have been mobilized. No, 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 there must be something wrong with this tone. Xfeng, let me ask you a question. Through the communicator, Chen Feng asked half-jokingly, you won't be angry, will you? No, Master Chairman, Xfeng is an artificial intelligence AI. Xfeng will not be angry. Xfeng immediately denied it without pausing for a second. Xfeng will not be angry because the president is surrounded by lovely girls, and he will not be jealous because these girls obey the president, and the president can do whatever he wants with them. Well, he said he wasn't angry, didn't he say it himself? However, this occasional coquettish Xfeng is quite cute, and it really looks more and more human. Chen Feng thought. A smile could not help appearing on the corner of his mouth. He replied on the communicator, okay Xfeng, after this task is completed, you can choose a place, and I will take you to play for a day as a reward. How about sample? Just take me alone? Xfeng's tone changed in an instant, and the previous water cooling could no longer hide the enthusiasm in his heart. Then Xfeng must make a good plan, and must leave a good memory with the chairman. After finishing speaking, Xfeng didn't wait for Chen Feng to continue talking, and directly hung up the communication, busy to arrange the tasks of the camp personnel. It's really cute. Chen Feng smiled and shook his head, feeling very amused by Xfeng's sudden change of attitude. Suddenly, Chen Feng felt the gazes around him, and when he looked around, he found that the combat doll girls of an infantry regiment around him were all staring at him with different eyes. Some are indifferent, some are clever and treacherous, and some are gentle and gentle. But there is a message in the eyes of all the girls. They are very curious. Master Commander. A girl with long silver hair holding a magic modification HK-416 spoke first. Do you prefer Miss Xfeng's style? As she spoke, the HK-416 girl pointed to herself. Then what do you think of me? I should be of the same type as her. Also, we can also install fertility plugins. Chen Feng, he will never rub another girl in a group of girls next time. The matter of Xfeng can only be regarded as a small episode. Immediately after that, the people in the camp embarked on the road to the Sonoran Desert to search for the mechanical virus. This time the operation was led by Chen Feng and his void-armed tactical humanoid girls, followed by other Foundation agents in the camp, who focused on protecting Dr. Lakezia from any accidents. Chen Feng didn't think it was an accident that the system specially selected Dr. Lakezia for him in this mission. After a little association, you can find that the level 1 mission of the Broken God is to contain mechanical viruses, and Dr. Lakezia's specialty is virology. She definitely has her own way of containing various viruses, including mechanical viruses, and she may be more professional than other researchers in the Foundation. In addition, Dr. Lakezia is also a top expert in the research of human body strengthening. Maybe after the task is completed, he can help him solve the problem that his physical fitness cannot control the intensity of spiritual energy. If he can really do this, then his strength can be improved a lot. So no matter from which angle you look at it, he will not allow any accidents to happen to Dr. Lakezia. Not only did all the Foundation agents brought stay by her side, Thor and the evil god Loki were also thrown by him to protect her. Chen Feng even allocated a part of the observation power of the space fleet to Dr. Lakezia. Let some Euro troops take protecting her as a super high priority, that is, protection level 0, which is only one level lower than him. This is a protection level that even the top leaders of the 5 major countries do not have, and there will be absolutely no problems. To Chen Feng's surprise, the evil god Loki didn't have any resistance to his arrangement, but obediently carried it out, and even Lakezia didn't complain about his instructions. This kid is definitely holding back some bad water. After sending Chuo a message to pay attention to Loki, Chen Feng refocused his attention on the valley ahead. According to the information from the system and the space fleet's satellite scan, the level 1 mission target is falling in the desert behind it. As long as you pass through this valley, you will see that spaceship. I knew it wouldn't go so well. Chen Feng narrowed his eyes slightly, and the words in his mouth showed obvious coldness. In the valley ahead, countless densely packed slender figures poked out from different places. They either wore tattered clothes, or covered their hidden parts naked with weeds and leaves, and they held primitive weapons such as rough wooden sticks in their hands. The only thing that can be said to have a common feature is that they all wear identical masks made of antler skulls on their heads. The dilapidated and outdated attire was in stark contrast to the tactical humanoid girls around Chen Feng who were fully armed with advanced near-future 5.2 technology. However, Chen Feng knew that facing the group of wild men with antlers and skulls who looked easy to bully, they were not as weak as they appeared. After all, no matter what, this is also one of the Foundation's target anomalous containment objects. The existence of the skull named Wendigo in the abnormal containment item 323 may be an anomalous containment object 323 can't pose a threat to them. But the amount in front of them, all over the mountains and plains, this is the only word that pops up in Chen Feng's mind. Report to the commander. Beside Chen Feng, the silver long-haired girl holding the magically modified HK-416 with a cold face approached him with the Foundation's force. According to calculations, there are a total of 13,456 abnormal containment objects 323 in front of us. Chapter 135 No matter how many people there are, 13,456? Hearing this number, Chen Feng couldn't help raising his eyebrows. It's really an incredible number. Do you want to apply for long-range fire support? Chen Feng looked at the HK-416 girl beside him with a half-smile. The meaning in his words was self-evident. HK-416 seemed not to understand what Chen Feng said, and replied solemnly, Master Commander, this level of anomalous containment does not need the support of others. 17. Well, Chen Feng reached out and pressed the headset communicator. Xwing asked FFR-14 to cover me. I have a tough battle to fight here. Understood. The president will grow up. Xwing's voice came through the communicator, which rarely aroused some excitement. Actually, Mr. President, we also have a tough battle here. A total of 53,800 abnormal containment objects 323 suddenly emerged from the forest. They escaped all the detection equipment we have, as if they appeared out of nowhere. Now the 909-tailed fox team and the Foundation the agents are all ready to fight, and we will definitely protect Dr. Lakezia. You're also surrounded there? Chen Feng was a little surprised. He thought that the abnormal containment 323 in the valley was all 323 descendants, but he didn't expect that some of them were hidden in the forest. Not only did they escape the detection of the 9-tailed fox team, which is good at detecting and hiding, and surrounded the action team in the rear. This abnormal containment 323 has given him more and more surprises. Chen Feng's brain is running fast, communicating with Xwing at the fastest speed. Xwing, let the agents of the Foundation remember that the most terrifying thing about the abnormal containment 323 is not their individual combat power, but the antler helmet mental pollution. You ask them to set up a defense line to prevent 323 from getting within 15 meters of the defense line, and then protect Dr. Lakezia. The physical strength of the abnormal containment object 323 is not even as strong as that of ordinary humans, so there is no need to worry. Let them make good use of the firepower in their hands and play an exciting defensive battle. I'll go back and solve your problems immediately after I've solved the problem here. Pressing the off button of the communicator, Chen Feng raised his head, and a silver-white figure came roaring from a distance. It is the FFR-14 remotely controlled by Xwing. FFR-14 hovered in the sky of the valley, attracting the attention of a lot of 323 in the valley. Then the artillery on the nose rotated with all its strength, and the large-caliber aviation machine gun bullets swept across the hill. Dozens of 323 instantly turned into bright red dust. All the anomalous containment objects 323 were enraged by the flight cyan bird. They either picked up the stones at their feet, or directly smashed them at FFR-14 with the weapons in their hands. Meeting. It's a pity that despite their strength, some even threw a sonic boom in the air, but it is still too far-fetched to encounter FFR-14 in a supersonic situation. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chen Feng opened his arms. Layer after layer of psionic fluctuations spread around his body. Psychic release. Apply group psionic shield, group spiritual stimulation, group psionic acceleration, group psionic weapon baptism, group spiritual barrier. Accompanied by Chen Feng's powerful psychic energy fluctuations, all the 1,000 tactical humanoid troops around him were covered with a layer of golden radiance. Even the troops in the rear not far away have been given layer after layer of buffs. The agents of the Foundation who were fighting the violent abnormal containment 323 were pleasantly surprised to find that with this layer of light covering their bodies, not only did they not feel tired, but even the power of the ammunition in their hands was greatly increased. The Foundation agent ammunition, which could only leave a big hole in the 323, can now directly smash a 323 to pieces, and also blow up 2 or 3 323 around it. How can this be a rifle bullet? This is clearly a cannon, right? What surprised them even more was that when 323 rushed up, some strange thoughts and fluctuations would appear in their hearts uncontrollably, such as wanting to eat meat, wanting to eat human flesh, wanting to join the opposite party and become one of them. This made many agents think of the characteristics of 323 that Miss Xfeng said. They thought that they would be assimilated by 323 several times, and they left a warning to their companions that if they were polluted by their hearts, they would kill themselves immediately. Last words. But when Chen Feng added this wave of buff, these effects immediately disappeared without a trace. This can't help but cheer up the agents, and the weapons in their hands wish to work harder. They have no fluctuations in their hearts now, and even want to kill more abnormal containment objects. Not to mention the hard-working agents. For Chen Feng, the cooperation between the tactical humanoid unit and FFR-14 is even more seamless. The army of abnormal containment 323 gave up targeting this huge amounts of Iron Bird after being invaded by FFR-14 for 3 or 4 rounds, and turned its target to Chen Feng's side. Since we can't fight the ones in the sky, let's kill all the ones on the ground first. And with so many juicy girls, it should look delicious. When the first 323 rushed down the valley roaring, the 323 army behind him rushed towards Chen Feng and the tactical humanoid troops like a tide. Obviously, they still didn't choose the right target for 697 to attack. Under Chen Feng's precise micromanipulation and buff, the tactical humanoid girl descended like a god, and the weapon in her hand sprayed out the dazzling red beam unique to Gaussian weapons, turning the charging 323 into coke one by one. FFR-14 also whizzed through the sky constantly, and the machine guns on the nose never stopped firing, ensuring that no anomaly containment 323 could get close to Chen Feng and his troops. With the cooperation of 1,000 tactical humanoid girls and FFR-14, the charge of abnormal containment 323 was weak, and more than 100,000 B2Bs were completely wiped out in less than 10 minutes of fire coverage. Even the antlers and skulls on the head were not spared. They were all smashed into powder. Report to the commander that all the enemies have been wiped out, and the combat objectives have been perfectly achieved. 416 The girl stood in front of Chen Feng and reported the results of the battle to him. Well done. Chen Feng rubbed the long silver hair of the 416 girl very rarely, and the eyes of the girls around were all attracted to him, showing envious expressions. Chen Feng pointed behind him. The battle there was far from over. Our teammates are still fighting. We can't stop here. Follow me back. Kill him without leaving any behind. Chapter 136 323 Mother, possessed as good warrior. Chen Feng led the tactical humanoid girls who formed the void armor, and under the attack of FFR-14 Xfeng, they quickly wiped out the 323 army of abnormal containment objects, and turned their heads to rush to the rear troops. That's where the main force of the 323 army is located. Chen Feng also doesn't know how this group of anomalous containment objects 323 made their decision. The vanguard, composed of 1,000 tactical humanoid girls who were fully armed, only sent a few members to stop them, and most of the main force chose to bypass them. Instead, attack the more innocuous-looking general exploration team of agents, researchers, and non-staff in the rear. No matter how you look at it, it's not normal. If it's a coincidence, it's too unbelievable, right? If it is not a coincidence, is it possible that behind the abnormal containment 323 there are other abnormal containments that can manipulate them? Or is it controlled by the system to increase the difficulty on purpose? No. The system has never done this kind of thing, and the abnormal containment is also the enemy of enemies to him, and there is no reason to do such meaningless things. It seems that it is necessary to grab a few 323s and study the reasons in depth. Chen Feng made a decision in his heart, and led the way forward at a faster pace. The words are divided into two ends. The battle in the rear was not as easy as Chen Feng's. Although they were full of Chen Feng's battlefield buff, their destructive power and defense power were improved a lot, and the special spiritual pollution of abnormal containment 323 had no effect on them. But that's 323 with more than 50,000. What is the concept of more than 50,000 people? Usually there are 40 or 50 students in a class in a school. A standard playground can be filled with 1 or 2,000 people, and the population of a small town is only 10 or 20,000. With 50,000 people, there is no end in sight. The charge is raging like a tsunami, and the roar is like a thunderstorm. This is the only feeling of the rear troops now. Fax Quid. Where the hell did this group of things come from? Frank held the light machine gun specially developed by the Foundation, and the trigger in his hand basically never stopped firing. At the moment, he could only vent his anger with a loud roar. Where the hell would I know? Beside him, Phil Coulson pulled the fuse of a grenade emitting golden light, counted down 3 seconds and threw it in the direction of the abnormal containment 323. Only a loud boom was heard, and hundreds of 323 were smashed to pieces in the golden explosion. A total of 50,000 monsters are hiding around us, and we haven't found any signs of them. Do they have portals, or are our eyes broken? I swear if I can go back alive this time, I must get rid of that stupid swallow who developed the detection equipment. While talking nonsense to himself, Phil Coulson picked up the light machine gun on the other side that was changed by other players and placed it beside Frank. The two fired at the same time, forming a perfect crossfire. Another burst of machine gun fire swept across, and hundreds of attacking 323 were intercepted in the middle, but there were too many. There are too many offensive anomalous containment 323. Their rear troops plus the nine-tailed fox squad who will join forces only have more than 100 people, and some of them are scientific researchers who have basically no combat effectiveness, which further reduces their combat effectiveness. With 100 versus 50,000, just relying on the firepower of individual soldiers in their hands, even with unlimited bullets, their weapons will be scrapped before all the enemies are wiped out. What's more, their ammunition was limited. After nearly half an hour of firefighting, more than half of it had gone down. The firepower of some shooting points had obviously decreased a lot, obviously because the follow-up ammunition could not keep up. The abnormal containment 323 also seems to have seen this point, and more of them gather and advance towards these places where the firepower is weakened. Wow, you bloody monsters! Seeing that a position with the weakest firepower has been blocked by thousands of 323s, and the gradually weakening firepower is completely insufficient to destroy the enemy in front of him, Frank shouted in despair and wanted to turn his machine gun towards that direction. Go to support. But before he turned his gun, he saw a thunderbolt falling from the sky. Hundreds of 323 instantly turned into coke and fell to the ground. Then, another green flame swept out from the camp, turning all 323 around the camp into ashes. This action actually created a breathing space of more than 10 meters for the defense of the rear troops. Thor, I really don't know what to say about you. Lost Mjolnir and even Thor's original power. Your lightning bolt is like a child peeing. Can it be thinner? Loki and Thor came out of the only temporary protective facility in the camp, with a blue thunder flashing in the palm of one of them. The green flame in the hands of 10 people is like a cunning green snake. Talking is useless, Loki. As Thor said, he raised his arm towards the sky, and another thunderbolt as thick as a bucket fell, smashing hard into the army of abnormal containment 323, and hundreds of abnormal containment 323 were immediately pulverized, and the surrounding 323 were also crushed. The one who was hit by huge amounts of impact flew out and crashed into other members. The advancing 323 army suddenly became chaotic, and the rhythm of the attack began to appear disordered. Vertical bar. Remember, I'm Thor. Thor gave Loki a hard look. And you can never be. Loki gave Thor a deep look, and suddenly let out a sneer. Yes, you will always be Thor, and you will always be just a black man. After speaking, he waved the emerald green flame in his hand and participated in the battle of the defense troops. Snort. Thor, who didn't understand the deep meaning of Bailuoji's words, could only grunt, and went to another direction to help defend with a thunderbolt in his hand. The battle continues. After nearly 30 minutes of fierce fighting, the rear troops wiped out nearly 20,000 abnormal containment objects 323 one after another, but there were still more than 30,000 remaining. In the eyes of the rear troops, they did not decrease at all, but seemed to be more and more. FXXK. Frank. I'm out of bullets. Phil Coulson tightly squeezed the trigger of the machine gun in his hand, but not a single bullet was fired from the red muzzle. Me too. Frank dropped the hot machine gun in his arms, and reached out to feel for the ammunition box beside him. Zows, but there was nothing inside. FK. Out of grenades too. Any other weapons? Phil Coulson gritted his teeth and shook his head. No, there is only one bullet left in my pistol magazine, which is to prevent the chairman's ability from failing. I don't want to be that kind of person. Ghostly monster. Frank nodded in agreement. Me too. After all. He glanced at the other troop members. It seems that other people are similar to us. With a sound, sleeping Rank pulled out a dagger from his calf. Phil Coulson, shrink the defensive front. We must protect Dr. Lake Kezia before the president arrives. The president said that she is the hope of this mission. Without her, human beings may perish. Good. Phil Coulson also imitated Frank and drew out the dagger, and the two leaned back to back. Come on, let us see to what extent you who have transformed into monsters have reached the level of strengthening. Chapter 137. Loki's Fear, the Vengeful Warrior Captain. As the ammunition of the troops in the rear was exhausted, the battle with the 323 army of the anomalous containment entered a hand-to-hand combat. All the Foundation combat troops drew out the short combat daggers specially provided by the Foundation, leaning against each other in twos while blocking the attack of the abnormal containment object 323, while gathering towards the defense line of the shelter in the middle. Their task is to protect the researchers in the shelter and support them until Chen Feng arrives. Before that, they must fight with all their strength, and death cannot stop them. This dagger is made of special materials. Not only is it light, it is effortless to wield, and its sharpness far surpasses the melee weapons of all national armed forces. Cutting a steel plate below 10 mm is like cutting meat, and cutting a person is like cutting vegetables. You can't feel what you cut when you go down with a dagger, but the opponent's arm just falls off. What's even more commendable is that this dagger has a strong affinity for Chinook energy. You can even attach your own Chinook energy to the dagger to extend its attack distance and change its attack attributes. Is there a more perfect melee weapon in this world? SHIELD and EDF approached Chen Feng many times to order this kind of dagger in batches, but they were all rejected by Chen Feng because the special material 657 could not be mass-produced. But these two are discerning people. This dagger has become the standard equipment of your Foundation's armed forces, and it cannot be mass-produced? They all know that Chen Feng does not want this technology to enter human society too quickly and wants to use this dagger. Material technology is one of the trump cards of the future Foundation. How about a sentence? Materials science is the basic science that represents the progress of human technology. Talk about a battlefield. Since the daggers in the hands of the agents have a strong psychic affinity, they naturally also benefited from Chen Feng's previous psychic buff. Each dagger, which was no longer than 20 centimeters, turned into a 2-meter-long sword. The agents wielding psychic enchanting, great sword strengthening, and dagger all turned into super soldiers. With a light wave of the weapon in their hands, 3 or 4 abnormal containment objects 323 were often cut off in the middle, and the psychic energy attached to it after the weapon leaves, it can continue to burn 323's body, burning up the wreckage they left on the field without leaving a trace. Loki and Thor were stunned for a moment when they saw the dagger turned into a psychic sword, and then they stared at 323's carnage like chopping melons and vegetables. What the hell is this bitch? It was just a dagger, right? Surely they read it right? Why is it now a big sword nearly 2 meters long? And it's still so destructive? Look at that Lee Ike and Phil Coulson. The dagger is almost dancing behind the two of them. Just such a mess of shooting. Almost killed more than 323. Is this still what a dagger should do? Apologize to the other daggers. Hey. Startled by the dagger, Loki calmed down and his eyes gradually lit up. He patted a Foundation agent who was replaced due to a thigh injury. Brother, can you use that dagger of yours for me? Use mine. Before the agent of the Foundation could answer him, Dr. Ray Lake Kezier, who had not shown himself, suddenly appeared beside him, and handed him a box. Inside is the self-defense dagger assigned to me by the Foundation, and I don't intend to use it. Just treat it as a gift from you to help us defend this time. After a pause, Ike looked at the beaming Loki and said, also don't think about other daggers. If the full length is known, he doesn't mind taking you. It was given to me as a test product. Hearing this, the joy on Loki's face suddenly faded, and he couldn't help shivering. This crazy woman is still thinking about her body? It's too scary. Suppressing the complaints in his heart, Loki opened the box in his hand. Adzi suddenly felt a chill rushing towards his face, as if the dagger was made by ice, so cold that strangers should not enter. Tentatively holding the dagger in his hand, Loki just wanted to feel the texture of the dagger, when suddenly an inexplicable sense of crisis rushed straight to his forehead. Without even thinking about it, he raised the dagger across his chest, and only heard a loud boom, and he was blown away by an oncoming boulder. The stone was 3 to 4 meters high and 1 to 2 meters wide. The situation of ordinary people being hit by it would not be much better than that at the scene of a car accident. Fortunately, Loki reacted in advance and blocked the vital position with a weight he just got. The sharp dagger sliced the boulder in half, but the remaining 2 halves hit Loki hard, making him stop until he hit the temporary shelter in the center of the camp. Vomiting out a mouthful of blood, Loki's drowsy brain was finally cleared up a little bit. He forced his somewhat blurred eyes open, and headed towards the direction that Boo flew in before. In the army of abnormal containment 323, an unusually tall and strong 323 was facing him. He was dressed in the costume of an Asgard warrior and could not see any expression on his face blocked by antler skulls, but Loki saw it from his eyes. Endless anger and greed. Loki's heart skipped a beat, even though he couldn't see his face, but from the special logo on his clothing, he recognized the identity of this abnormal containment object 323 at a glance. Isn't this the Asgard warrior leader he brought to Blue Star? How did he also become anomalous containment object 323? Loki's pupils shrank sharply, and he thought of a possibility. He once saw 323 holding a skull leading the team that attacked them, and they obviously had intentions for themselves at that time. So when he attacked, he didn't aim at his vitals, but instead wanted to lose his ability to move. It's just that he used too many illusion skills in the past and became the leader of the warrior instead. If I hadn't run away at that time, wouldn't it be me who was assimilated by pollution? Loki's body began to tremble uncontrollably. Is this warrior captain here to avenge himself? Because he gave up on him and all the Asgard fighters? Is that why his eyes are so angry? So there are only more than 10,000 troops surrounding the chairman of the Foundation, and 323 more than 50,000 troops attacking the rear? Because I'm in the rear troops. But what is the greed in his eyes? Loki's doubts were quickly answered. The abnormal containment 323, which was assimilated by the warrior leader, roared and began to accelerate. Only Loki and Thor could understand the content of his roar. That is, flesh and blood of the gods. The flesh and blood of the gods. Chapter 138 Aleixia who was attacked? Flesh and blood of the gods. The abnormal Containment 323 assimilated by the warrior leader let out a roar that shook the sky, while burying the legs that became more slender after being assimilated, and rushed towards Loki in the defensive circle crazily. In front of him, he ignores all his companions, who are also the 323 anomalous containment object, or the agents of the Foundation. Anyone who dares to stand in front of him will be picked up by him or thrown at the panic. The fleeing Loki, or be directly trampled under his feet mercilessly. Loki watched in horror as 323, who used to be his warrior leader, ran towards him like a crazy beast, but he couldn't find any place to escape. The surrounding area has already been tightly blocked by 323 all over the mountains and plains. It is impossible to kill him no matter whether he uses illusion or force. Moreover, he was hit by a boulder and his body was seriously injured, which exacerbated the situation he faced. Dilemma. Seek help from people in the surrounding foundations? No. Impossible. This abnormal containment object 323, which was assimilated by the warrior leader, yelled in Asgard, and the other people on the field didn't understand it, so they just took it as an ordinary yell and didn't care. But if you go to ask them for help, you must explain it. The reason is that this group of people will choose to throw themselves out to save their team with a high probability. Can't escape, can't escape, can't escape. But how can you survive if you don't escape? The ammunition of the troops in the rear has long been exhausted, and the defensive circle has shrunk to less than 20 meters. All Foundation fighters are relying on close combat to delay the battle. But no matter how sharp and light the dagger in the hand is, prolonged swinging and concentrated fighting will also cause fatigue. When a member of the nine-tailed fox team who tried to block warrior leader 323 was slapped away by him, Loki knew that the team's collapse was not far away. Glancing at Dr. Lakezia behind him, he saw that he was sitting on the floor holding a notebook and tablet and typing on the keyboard frantically, immersed in his own world, completely ignoring the surrounding battle that was worse than hell. Loki's eyes couldn't help but brighten for a moment. By the way, there is this trick. Loki bent down in embarrassment, dodging a Foundation agent who was thrown by warrior captain 323 as a cannonball, and then he staggered and trotted in the direction of Lakezia. Damn it. He was seriously injured by the boulder just now, and even his basic actions were affected. If he doesn't get out of the battlefield quickly, he will really die here. After narrowly dodging a few long-range attacks from warrior captain 323, Loki finally arrived outside the temporary shelter where Lakezia was staying. It is said to be a shelter, but it is actually just a small bulletproof warehouse with some steel frames locked on the ground as a cover to block the attacks of rags constantly flying around. Loki was about to call out to Lakezia to attract her attention, but a big hand suddenly patted on his shoulder. Looking back, Thor was staring at him unkindly. Don't have any unrealistic expectations about your little trick. As he said that, Thor also glanced at Lakezia who had entered the working state and ignored everything around him. Dr. Lakezia is very likely the hope of the entire Blue Star humanity. As long as you dare to push her out as your shield, the president of the Foundation will definitely kill you until Asgard digs you out. Thor lowered his voice and whispered in Loki's ear. That monster outside who is different from other 323s came to look for you, right? I said that according to your personality, it is impossible to come to Blue Star alone. But I didn't expect you to sell them to other monsters for yourself. If the father knows that, you will never leave Asgard for the rest of your life. My dear big brother, what are you talking about? How could those monsters come to me? The corner of Loki's mouth twitched slightly. I just want Dr. Lakezia to heal me. He pointed to his body, which was hit by stones and couldn't stand up. You see, I'm injured so badly, I can't do anything, right? Thor eyed Loki suspiciously, his hand on his shoulder not letting go. You really didn't have any wrong thoughts? Loki raised his hand and swears. I swear by my divinity, there really isn't one. Thor's suspicion of Loki still hasn't been dispelled. Just when he was about to forcibly take Loki to another place to continue to solve the problem, Dr. Lakezia, who was still in the shelter, suddenly came out. She first glanced at Thor and Loki who were in strange postures with a flat gaze, then looked at Xfing who had been on standby outside the shelter and said, Xfing, notify everyone to evacuate urgently. There is a situation with the president. It is impossible to support them in a short time. We need to go deeper into the forest, where the terrain is complex and it is more suitable for us to hide. Zero seeking flowers 0. Xfing silently looked at Lakezia, but did not respond. Also, I discovered through observation just now that the target of this group of 323 is very likely to be the evil god Loki. We can break his limbs and throw them here, and retreat immediately when 323 turns his attention to him. Xfing still didn't respond to Lakezia, just looked at her. What's wrong, Miss Xfing? 0. Lakezia's originally flat tone suddenly became anxious. You still don't believe me? Because you are not Dr. Laike. Xfing said a word very abruptly. The chairman will not stop contacting me first. Miss Xfing, what are you talking about? How can I? Alexia was just about to refute. Suddenly a large shadow fell from the sky and fell towards the few people. Several people looked up to the sky, and the one who fell was the warrior commander 323 who had already broken through the defensive circle. Flesh and blood of the gods. Roaring and falling to the ground. The target of warrior chief 323 is strangely neither the entangled Thor and the evil god Loki but Dr. Lakesia. Dr. Lakesia, Thor's eyes were tearing apart. He didn't even care about the Loki in his hand. He stepped forward a few steps and wanted to push Lakesia away. But he was still one step too late. Just as he was about to step forward, Warrior Commander 323 had already landed on Lakesia, pressing her firmly to the ground, and let out a sky-shattering roar. Hungry, hungry, hungry. Every time he roared, Warrior Commander 323 threw a punch at Lakesia's face. With each punch, the surrounding ground shook violently, as if the ground was about to be pierced. It wasn't until the third punch was over that Warrior Leader 323 held Lakesia, opened his mouth wide and bit down on the scarf. Chapter 139, The President Knows If You Make a Move. Dr. Lakesia is dead? Thor stared blankly at the warrior leader 323 who was gnawing on the flesh and blood of the female doctor. He felt his heart stopped beating. Is the hope of the Blue Star humanity just gone? Before Thor recovered from the despair of mission failure, he saw the flesh and stumps of human women splashing everywhere in front of him suddenly disappeared after a twist, and who was held in the arms of warrior captain 323. The body of Dr. Lakesia disappeared along with it. What's the situation? Was everything that happened just because he was dazzled? Can you let go of your hand? A woman's emotionless voice came from in front of him, and Thor stared blankly. He was stunned to find that what he was holding in his hand was no longer his brother Loki, but instead turned into a man who should have been torn into pieces by warrior captain B-23. Fragments of Lakesia, 187. Doctor, how will you be here? Definitely because of your brother's illusion skills. Lakesia twisted his shoulders and broke free from Thor's shackles. Since you patted him on the shoulder, he has exchanged illusion skills with me. Thor was a little confused. Then why didn't you say it earlier? Lakesia didn't even look at Thor, and took out a miniature camera from his pocket, because I want to see how far Loki's illusion skills can go. Looking at the warrior leader 323 who fell into rage not far away because the prey in his arms disappeared, Lakesia showed a thoughtful look. Now it seems that Loki's illusion can not only deceive the visual effect, but even the sense of touch can be deceived to a certain extent. Their warrior leader 323, who was in a frenzy, suddenly jumped up and punched the air around him. Under Thor's dumbfounded eyes, Loki, who was completely broken, suddenly appeared in midair, flying out of the old man. Lakesia squinted his eyes and recorded all this in a miniature camera. Unfortunately, for some reason, his illusion skills were unable to fool this Asgardian assimilated anomalous Containment 323. Thor's brain finally turned the corner. He stared at Lakesia who was still taking pictures of warrior captain 323 with his eyes wide open. So the original target of the abnormal containment object 323 you mentioned is Loki? Lakesia glanced at Thor. You should know better than me, right? When this 323 came out, didn't he wear the costume of an Asgard warrior, and shouted the flesh and blood of the god in Asgard? You can't even understand your own language, can you? Thor. Feelings. This woman already knew all this, but she just wanted to observe it, so she was too lazy to care about it. What kind of Frankenstein is this? Now what? Thor looked at the warrior leader 323 who was walking towards Loki step by step, and Loki who was crawling on the ground on all fours and wanted to stay away, with a trace of unbearable in his eyes. If he left it alone, Loki would definitely be torn into pieces by warrior captain 323 and swallowed. Seeing his own clan and brothers being tortured and killed in front of his eyes, no matter how annoying he was, it would be difficult for him to turn a blind eye. Loki deserves to die, and he deserves to die. Actually, I really want to see what the abnormal Containment 323 will look like after devouring the gods. Lakesia put away his miniature cameras expressionlessly. After all, this kind of scene probably only happens once in 10,000 years. Pity. Lakesia shook his head. No chance. An air-to-surface missile whizzed across the sky with the sound of Lakesia, and before he had time to get close to Loki, Warrior Commander 323 was hit hard by the missile, and then followed the kinetic energy of the missile towards the 323rd Army as flying. This surface-to-air missile seemed to have eyes, and it went on a rampage in the 323 Army. After smashing countless 323 into meatloaf, a violent explosion occurred in the center of the army, and more the abnormal Containment 323 turned into dust in this explosion and dissipated in the world. Following the air-to-ground missiles is a fighter with a strange shape. It's the chairman's landline. Some agents looked up at the slowly descending fighter planes in the sky, and shouted in surprise. The President's reinforcements are here. Master President, our mission has been completed. We have defended our position. The cockpit of the plane opened slowly. Chen Feng stood up from the cockpit. He did not rush to reply to the cheers from the Foundation people on the battlefield. Taking a deep breath, Chen Feng slowly raised his hands, and the golden wave of spiritual energy rippled layer after layer with his movements. When this layer of light passed over the agents of the Foundation, Chen Feng clenched his fists at the same time, and murmured, "Thunderbolt." The original golden light suddenly exploded and turned into countless chains of chain lightning, directly rippling in the army of the invading anomalous Containment 323. Whether it is 323 who is still fighting with the Foundation agent, or is on the way to charge the 323, or the 323 who acted as a long-range catapult in the distance, were all surrounded by countless chain lightnings. A burst of dazzling electric light instantly illuminated the entire battlefield, and when the light faded, the 323 troops of the abnormal containment surrounding the troops in the rear fell down in pieces, trembling constantly on the ground, having already lost their fighting power. In this way, at least 5,000 B-23 were brought down. Chen Feng didn't choose to electrocute 323, because doing so would consume too much sonic energy and the range was limited. Reducing the power to the point of losing the ability to move can expand the damage range by at least 3 times. No one knows about Chen Feng's meticulous calculations on the use of sonic powers. They only know that Chen Feng knocked down a huge number of 323s as soon as he made a move. They may not be able to destroy so many after 10 minutes of fighting. As expected of the president, you are so amazing when you make a move. That's natural, otherwise how can I become the president? By the way, isn't the President 5.1 also an abnormal containment object? Anomaly containment object 001 or something? Otherwise, why is it so strong? Shut your mouth. The President is a purebred human. If you talk nonsense, be careful and I will tell your wife where you hide your wine. Sorry, I was wrong. Under the influence of Chen Feng, the morale of the agents of the surrounding foundations, which had been a little bit down, rose back to the peak again. Because they know that as long as the President is present, these abnormal containments are nothing but scum. Seeing that the offensive crisis of the troops in the rear has been alleviated, Chen Feng pressed the headset of the earphone and said slowly, 416, let the armed dolls act, and destroy all anomalous containment objects 323. Remember to pay attention to an unusually tall and strong 323. Here's our real containment target. Chapter 140 Contain 323. The new Foundation building is unlocked. With the arrival of Chen Feng, the battle gradually came to an end. Chen Feng raised his hand and gave another wave of buffs to all the Foundation agents who were still fighting. The Foundation agents who were already in decline, after being washed by the golden light once again, only felt that the fatigue from all over their bodies disappeared a lot, and they started to fight. It feels more like returning to the beginning. Only Chen Feng knows that this kind of buff cannot be blessed indefinitely, because the agents of the Foundation are human beings after all. They are not tactical humanoid girls composed of machines, and being blessed with sonic buff several times in a short period of time will affect their bodies, cause irreversible damage. It is believed that after the end of this mission, many combatants will experience long-term fatigue and inability to move. This is the consequence of the continuous stimulation of muscles and nerves by the slave. Afterwards, give those who participated in this mission a good vacation, and give them a batch of medicines that can restore their bodies and enhance their physique first. The fight in the center of the battlefield is in full swing, and the rear of the battlefield is not too panic-stricken. The tactical humanoid girls summoned by Chen Feng started the O9 suppression operation as early as Chen Feng ordered. Unlike the Foundation agents of the rear troops, they are not human beings, but super-intelligent combat humanoid AI tactical interfaces, whether it is weapons or combat skills. They are more than a star and a half higher. So facing the 323 army that would only charge forward, they slaughtered one-sidedly. 1,000 tactical girls were scattered in the rear of the 323 army in a 3-member squad. Their footsteps were centered on the camp of the rear troops and they advanced rapidly, and the weapons in their hands never stopped firing. Red beams of light scattered on the battlefield, and each bullet could wipe out several 323 under the blessing of spiritual energy buff. As the tactical humanoid girls gradually advanced, the girls who were originally scattered began to move closer together, forming an encirclement circle composed of thousands of people. Relying on the internal and external coordination of the rear troops in the center, the tactical humanoid troops and Foundation agents surrounded the 323 army of the few remaining anomalous containment objects. After the last few gunshots, the entire 323 army with more than 50,000 abnormal containment objects 323 was completely annihilated. Master President, holding a tablet in his hand, Feng reported the battle situation to Chen Feng. In this containment operation of abnormal containment object 323, we eliminated a total of 67,255 offspring of abnormal containment object 323, and contained one abnormal containment object 323 parent. While listening to Xfeng's report, Chen Feng looked at the abnormal containment 323 in front of him, which was assimilated by Asgard warriors. At the moment, he had already been tied with several special belts, his limbs were covered with dense bullet holes, and dozens of taser bullets were left on his body. It can be seen that before he was captured, he still did it was a struggle. Xfeng also introduced to Chen Feng the situation of this soldier, Chief 323. The anomalous containment object 323, assimilated by the Asgard warrior captain, was captured by the tactical humanoid team. They found him in a coma in an explosion crater. They accidentally woke him up when they wanted to capture it immediately. After some fighting, it was successfully captured after paying the price of 2 tactical dolls with minor injuries. Chen Feng put his hands on the body of the warrior commander 323, and the system sounded. Congratulations to the commander for completing the containment of the anomaly containment object 323 Wendigo Skull Matrix. System rewards will be issued soon. The commander has contained the abnormal containment object 323 Wendigo Skull, and obtained the strengthening card of Wendigo's Wrath, and can use special spiritual energy fluctuations by analyzing Wendigo's Skull. The troops under the link of the psychic commander enter into a frenzied combat state. In this state, everyone's strength, stamina, and speed will be improved to a certain extent. The commander received a special abnormal container and obtained 200 council points. The severe mutation caused by the abnormal containment 323 was perfectly resolved by the commander, once again expanding the influence of the Foundation to the alien forces, and unlocking the special building of the Foundation to defend the support center. Plane Support Center, a special building for the Foundation. You can regularly spend council points to hire troops of various human forces from other planes to fight through the Plane Support Center. Listening to the system's report, Chen Feng's breathing couldn't help but become a little quicker. Although the system rewards this time did not directly strengthen his physical and spiritual abilities, they are unprecedented in terms of enhancing the Foundation's strength. First of all, he once again obtained a team-based buff Wendigo Wrath Strength Strengthening card. With this buff, his void armament can be upgraded to another level, and the combat abilities of tactical humanoid girls will be even stronger. The second is the Plane Support Center. This is the most important part of this system reward. It seems intriguing to spend council points to hire human force units from other planes to fight through the Plane Support Center. What kind of troops are the human forces in other planes? How far have they developed? Is it the clone soldiers and tank troops in the interstellar world, or the UAG joint force with 243 antimatter bombs in the wandering Earth? If it is a human army from a high magic plane, wouldn't it take off in minutes? What kind of broken Shendu should stand aside? Okay. Just when Chen Feng opened the employment interface excitedly, a basin of cold water poured him a chill. Without him, it is a bit expensive. A unit equivalent to a modern human mixed division requires about 10 council points. That seems like a lot, doesn't it? But know that Chen Feng is going to face all kinds of anomalous contained objects, not a world war. What is the combat effectiveness of a modern human mixed division against anomalous containment objects? Not to mention the broken god. It is only a matter of time before a random city destroyer-level anomalous containment object wipes out several armies of human troops. Therefore, the modern human blender is really not enough to watch. Scrolling down further, 1,000 combat troops of level 1 civilization need 100 council points, and those of level 2 civilization directly become 5,000 points of level 3. Level 3 Chen Feng didn't watch it directly, and couldn't afford to invite him if he did. It seems that it is necessary to complete the containment tasks of the system to earn more council points. Otherwise, such a good guard at the Plane Support Center is rotten in my hands. No matter how I think about it, I am too unwilling, right? Chapter 141 Temporary Rest, Solution to Physical Problems. Chen Feng did not choose to go on the road immediately after accepting the system reward. He led Xfeng down to convey the action order for a temporary rest. First, because he had just experienced a large-scale fierce battle, the people in the action team had eaten his Shinik buff at the cost of physical strength. Now most of them in a state of semi-stretch. Even if the physical fitness of Foundation agents allows them to continue to act, it will greatly reduce the completion of subsequent tasks. The second reason is that except for characters like Chen Feng, the tactical humanoid girl, and Thor, the ammunition supplies of the other combat members of the Foundation have been exhausted during the battle, and now they are in urgent need of logistical supplies. Otherwise they will encounter the same situation as now. For large-scale battles comparable to local battles, they can only watch from the rear. After all, after experiencing such a group mutation as the abnormal containment object 323, Chen Feng can't guarantee that the abnormal containment objects that appear later will all be individual action models. What's more, abnormal containment objects such as mechanical viruses are originally known for their characteristics such as infection, clustering, and division. God knows what they will mutate into. Finally, The third point is that Chen Feng himself has used psychic powers unscrupulously many times. Whether it is giving all combatants psychic buffs or releasing lightning-type psychic powers, more than 5,000 abnormal containment objects have been knocked down beyond his limit. Although there is still a lot of spiritual energy in the body, the physical pain and fatigue are not so easy to get used to. Chen Feng from at the moment was in a tent in the middle of the rebuilt camp. He was sitting on a bench with his upper body bare, and a Lakezia was standing beside him, carefully observing his condition. Master President, your body is simply perfect. Chen Feng's muscles are different from the usual large muscles of Westerners. He is originally an Oriental, with a low body fat percentage, and his muscles look tighter and more detailed. A Lakezia caressed Chen Feng's sharp muscle lines like a knife with his fingertips, and he couldn't help but let out a low voice of admiration. Whether it's explosive power, strength or body fat distribution, they are several times beyond the limit that the local humans of Blue Star can achieve through normal exercise. It's just. Alexia stared at the thin lines that were densely covered with golden light on Chen Feng's body, and his expressionless face couldn't help being stirred a little. My lord, are you really a Blue Star human? Normal Blue Stars don't have such golden lines on their bodies. Are you an alien like Loki and Thor? The corner of Chen Feng's mouth twitched. He was a time traveler, but his original body was just that of an ordinary Blue Star, so he wasn't an alien. Definitely, it is impossible for Chen Feng to talk about this kind of thing with Alexia. He changed the subject with a smile. So I am looking for you? Ever since I learned Shinic power, my body has been moving more and more. The weirder direction is developing. Can you see if there is any way to solve these problems? Alexia used a small instrument that Chen Feng had never seen before to sweep over his body constantly, but the words in his mouth did not stop. Do you feel that you are more prone to fatigue recently, and the state of your body will drop sharply every time you use a lot of spiritual energy, and it will also be accompanied by nerve pain? Chen Feng nodded in surprise. Have you discovered all of this? Because there are abnormal ruptures inside your muscle fibers, and there are so many lactic acid enriched in it that can make ordinary people sore and pass out, and the deeper nerve level is also full of scars. Alexia said, while the small instrument in his hand was handed to Chen Feng. Chen Feng glanced at it, and it was full of dense data and terms that he couldn't understand. Take out one of your injuries and put it on ordinary people. No, even if it is a Foundation agent, they will only be able to rely on wheelchairs for the rest of their lives. Alexia suddenly stared at Chen Feng seriously. This is only if they can endure pain all the time. Look, this is professionalism, and any problems can be found immediately. Then what can you do? Chen Feng was a little uncomfortable being stared at by Alexia. He had no choice but to speak up to break the slightly awkward atmosphere. I probably sorted it out. Alexia turned and went to the newly built laboratory server, and started typing on the keyboard frantically. In the final analysis, the biggest problem you currently face, Mr. President, is that the strength of your physical body cannot completely match the spiritual energy in your body. Too much spiritual energy keeps flowing in your body, making your skin, muscles, and nerves and bones are under pressure far beyond what they can bear. If you keep doing this, you will either die from Shinic enhanced body explosion, or Shinic power will completely melt the flesh into a puddle of Shinic polymer. Chen Feng nodded frequently. He also knew that this was the crux of the problem, but he couldn't find a solution, so he came to Alexia for help. Actually, the solution is very simple. It is to greatly enhance the physical strength of the president, and this enhancement is best growth type, allowing it to grow together with your spiritual energy, so that it can be done once and for all, without any future troubles. Alexia rarely put down the keyboard, pinched his nose with his fingers, and fell into some kind of thinking. The problem is, Mr. President, your physical strength is already several times the limit of the current Blue Stars. It is absolutely impossible to strengthen the conventional means. I currently have one and only one way. Alexia shrugged his shoulders, showing helplessness in his tone. It's just that the current conditions are not mature, and many materials are not at hand, so there is no way to realize it. Chen Feng asked curiously, what materials do you need? Alexia counted with his fingers: blacklight virus, T-virus stock solution, G-virus. Listening to her constantly counting the names of various viruses, Chen Can became more and more black. Is she trying to turn herself into a virus aggregate? Just now she said that she is no longer a Blue Star human being, but this time she directly transforms herself into a human being, right? After counting more than a dozen Nuolizao virus names, Alexia stopped. She looked at Chen Feng expressionlessly and said, at the end, just add some genetic tissue that will grow you, some hair and subcutaneous tissue. The corner of Chen Feng's mouth couldn't help twitching. Alexia, can you tell me what your thoughts are? Alexia replied indifferently, definitely is to make a mixed virus, plus the president's body tissue to make this kind of habit to your physical characteristics, so that there will be no accidental mutations after the injection. Seeing Chen Feng's complexion is not so good, Alexia continued to explain, don't worry about growing up, this virus will only enhance your physical strength, and will not cause you to have genetic mutations. Theoretically so. Chen Feng was listening well, but when Ali Ike said the last sentence, his face turned green. Theoretically, what is going on like this? So there will still be accidents, right? Chapter 142 Exchange Conditions. There is a solution to Chen Feng's physical problems. After all, this woman is no longer a genius. She graduated from a famous university at the age of 10, and defeated Wesker overwhelmingly by herself. Especially after being summoned to this world by Chen Feng with an S-level talent card, it became even more terrifying. According to the description on the S-level character card, this woman is far from being as simple and weak as she appears on the surface. She still has many secrets and abilities that have not been revealed, and Chen Feng needs to discover them slowly. So Chen Feng decided to trust her, not only because of her status as a top expert in virology, but also because of her absolute loyalty to herself. With this woman's personality, if she can do it, she can definitely do it. If she can't do it, she can't do it, and she won't insist on lying about everything for the sake of false face. After this mission is over, I will return to the Foundation's base and start deploying new hybrid viruses. Alekezia finished analyzing Chen Feng's physical condition, and ran to the electronic screen blackboard of the experimental platform on the other side, started writing and drawing. Before that, I will make some simple emergency versions, so that your flesh 260 body can be temporarily enhanced, and the current negative state will be suppressed first. Thank you, Dr. Alekezia. Chen Feng put on his clothes, hiding the light golden lines on his body. After a moment of hesitation, Chen Feng continued to speak to Ali Ike. By the way, can I ask a personal question? Ali Ike stopped the electronic pen in his hand, turned his head, stared at Chen Feng silently for a while, and then said, "Yes, what do you want to ask?" Chen Feng asked with a bit of confusion. "Didn't you say before that you want my hair tissue and skin tissue to make viruses?" "Yes, and then?" Hearing Ali Ike's unwavering tone, Chen Feng's strange mood was diluted a lot, and he said directly, "Then why do you still need my genetic information?" Ali Ike stared at Chen Jun for a while, did not answer his question, turned his head and continued to write and draw on the electronic screen. Chen Feng waited for a while and saw that he couldn't get the desired response, so he got up and walked out. There are still many things waiting for him to deal with, and he cannot waste time here. However, when Chen Feng just opened the curtain of the tent, Adsi, Leixia still spoke. "I think your genetic information must be very good. I want to see if your offspring can stand at the pinnacle of the world just like you." Leixia was still talking behind. Chen Feng didn't dare to continue listening, and ran out in a hurry. "Just kidding. Xfeng is still staying at the door. If she hears something bad and passes it back to Miss 2B, he will suffer later." Thinking about the sudden indifference of the two white-haired ladies towards him, Chen Feng felt that his life was grey. Thinking of those tactical humanoid girls again, Chen Feng felt a headache. Really, why are these girls so greedy for their bodies? Hey, it's not okay to be too handsome or too strong. It's really bad to be always missed. Oh, by the way, there must be no chance for Leixia to get his own genetic fragment later on. In case a little Chen Feng really pops up one day, he can't even explain it. The tents in one corner of the camp are different from the others. It is not like other tents surrounded by Foundation agents in 2s and 3s or resting or chatting. Nor is it full of Frankenstein's atmosphere like the temporary research tent exclusive to Alekezia in the center of the camp. Around this tent, there are only 100 tactical humanoid girls holding weapons, forming a defensive circle like an iron bucket, and various high-tech detection instruments are distributed in all directions to aim at the tent. I'm afraid not even a fly can fly in. But this is not to prevent any accidents to the people in the tent, but to prevent the people in the tent from escaping. It's here, right? Chen Feng walked slowly outside the tent, with Xwing and HK-416 beside him. After running out of the Temporary Research Institute in Aleik, Chen Feng took the two young ladies to inspect the basic situation of one side of the camp, and after solving all the basic problems, he arrived at the final destination of his trip. This is the tent here. Opening the curtain of the tent casually, Chen Feng poked his head into the dim tent, and then a weak voice came from the farthest corner. "Is this how you treat your guests?" Chen Feng looked up. Loki was being tied up and thrown in the corner of the tent. Beside him was the abnormal containment object 323 solidified by the Asgard captain who was still in a state of obsession. Hearing Loki's words, Chen Feng raised his eyebrows. "It's up to you whether you're a guest or not, Mr. Loki." Chen Feng came in front of Loki, and couldn't help being amazed at Loki's state. It can only be said that Asgard people are worthy of being born fighters. Even Loki's recovery ability is so strong. Don't look at his sickly appearance, but except for the damaged clothes, all the injuries on his body have almost recovered. You know, it was the injury after being hit head-on by a 3-meter-long boulder, and was hammered 3 times by the monster who was also an Asgard. Spider-Man probably burped directly. Unexpectedly, Loki just lethargic. Loki met Chen Feng's sizing eyes, and the majesty of being a god made him unable to resist provoking Chen Feng several times, but when he thought of Chen Feng's performance on the battlefield, he felt extreme fear, and forced to provoke Chen Feng words were pressed back. In the end, Loki had no choice but to say with a wry smile, "Then what are you doing here? Asking the teacher for a crime?" "That's right. I was going to use my illusion to replace that mad scientist with me and throw it on the battlefield to feed the monsters, but so what? Anyway, she survived in the end. Didn't she?" "My illusion didn't. You can fool my men," Loki said, grinning ironically. "I really didn't expect that I would be killed by my original subordinates in the end. This can be regarded as the biggest failure of my trip. But you didn't dare to come to Blue Star alone, because you were afraid of your brother Thor and the Mjolnir in his hands." Chen Feng's words were full of sarcasm. "So you are just a coward in the end." "Coward Loki." Loki's body trembled. He wanted to get angry. He wanted to be angry. But thinking of his current situation, he chose to give up because of Chen Feng's strength first. "What do you want?" Loki asked suddenly, without warning. However, Chen Feng answered without any hesitation, as if he already knew that Loki would ask such a question. "I said I want Asgard to help Blue Star deal with the abnormal containment. Are you willing?" Chapter 143 The Emergence of Uncontrollable Factors. "You want Asgard to help Blue Star deal with the abnormal containment?" Loki repeated Chen Feng's words, his tone full of disbelief. "Are you crazy or am I crazy?" Loki suddenly laughed as he spoke. "You come to talk to me about this kind of thing? Isn't Thor by your side? Why don't you let him help? He is the Orthodox Asgard heir. And I, Loki Odinson, I'm just the second son of an empty name. I'm not even related to the father god Odin. Why do you think I command the people of Asgard?" Hearing Loki roaring with all his strength, Chen Feng spoke slowly. "Because Thor is not suitable for synthesis as a king." "What?" Loki froze for a moment. He didn't understand what Chen Feng meant. Thor is brave, decisive, powerful, and full of the personal charm of a leader. In the eyes of ordinary people, he is the best candidate for the highest authority. Chen Feng didn't answer Loki's doubts, but continued talking. "But people who know him know that he is impulsive, irritable, not good at calm thinking, and pays too much attention to feelings. This is exactly the character that 10 leaders should not have." Loki fell silent suddenly. He looked at Chen Feng quietly, trying to hear what he wanted to express from his mouth. "And you Loki?" Chen Feng pointed to Loki and said, "The people of Asgard don't like you because you are cunning and treacherous and like to play pranks. But it also just proves that you have a flexible mind. And you are eager for power, eager to be recognized, and you are willing to pay any price for your interests. All you have done so far is just to attract the attention of Odin and Thor. Although you are a bit petty, you also show your strong politics, wrist and controllability." Chen Feng took a few steps forward, and suddenly untied the belt that bound Loki. "So I can help you ascend the throne with Thor, and you will rule him and his army, and rule Asgard from now on. And the price? The might of Asgard is for my use." Loki didn't get up immediately. He stared firmly into Chen Feng's eyes, without any emotion in his eyes. "How about it? Accept?" Chen Feng responded to Loki's gaze with an equal attitude. "No." Loki shook his head. "I cannot accept." Loki slowly stood up from the corner. His height of 1.93 meters was much taller than the strengthened Chen Feng. He looked down at Chen Feng. "I'm the only king of Asgard. I will defeat Thor and take the throne from Odin. And you?" Loki tapped Chen Feng's chest hard with his fingers. "I admit that your personal strength is very strong, but when I ascend the throne, I will lead all Asgard warriors to destroy you. Blue Star, I don't deserve to have someone as strong as you." 2 days later, the Prepare team once again embarked on a journey to the Sonoran Desert to find the Mechanicus spaceship. This time the preparation time was slightly longer, because Chen Feng transferred more fighters and equipment to the Foundation. The current action team is no longer composed of simple combat teams carrying rifles and drones as before. More than 3,000 combatants have reformed a large operational force, and there are a large number of supplies and equipment behind the force. Heavy firearms. I believe that they will be able to deal with the attack of the same level of abnormal containment objects with ease this time. In fact, both UAG and SHIELD wanted to send more people to support, but Chen Feng refused. It's not that he looks down on the military configuration of the two sides, but that the entire Sonoranshore, a complete blockade, is what they should do. What if some unsightly explorer, environmental protection enthusiast, or NGO organization member ran inside to fulfill his so-called life ideal and was infected by some terrible abnormal containment? That would be complete calf. So, no accidents are allowed around the Sonoran Desert right now, at least not until his mission is complete. There is light rain falling in the sky. This rain started to fall in the valley 2 days ago. It is not too big. It is a little bit bigger than drizzle in the place where human beings live, but it is not so big in the desert. Too ordinary. There's always an uncomfortable feeling. Chen Feng sits in the all-terrain all-purpose off-road vehicle that has been deployed, closes his eyes and rests his mind. The sound of pattering rain is the most suitable accompaniment for Xiaoyan, but this sound is not so beautiful to his ears now. It has never rained for such a long time in the desert. Xfeng drove the car with all his attention, and continued to talk to Chen Feng. I heard that rain is a very dangerous thing in the eyes of desert people. There is indeed such a saying, but the reasons are different. The specific reason has not been made public until now. It may definitely be related to me as a virologist, and I don't pay much attention to these things. Behind the car sat HK-416, who had just been promoted to the temporary captain of the tactical humanoid girl, and Dr. Laiksaya, who had not stopped scientific research even while sitting in the car. At the moment, Laiksaya stopped his hands typing on the keyboard, raised his head and said, "Perhaps God is warning us not to move forward." Chen Feng chuckled and said self-deprecatingly, "Besieged by abnormal containment 323 before meeting the broken god, I don't know how many challenges I will encounter later." Compared to predicting the danger in the future, I want to know why you want to untie Loki, my lord. Laiksaya took out the gold-rimmed glasses from his pocket, put them on, and pushed them smoothly. His degree of danger is no less than that of the mother body of abnormal containment 323. Chen Feng shrugged his shoulders with a relaxed expression. "It's nothing. He is a guest of Asgard after all." As he spoke, Chen Feng covered his head and pretended to have a headache. "I don't want to go back to 3.9 and be babbled by those government officials for a long time. I hate the kind of slobbering meeting where there is no result after a long time of quarreling." Lai Quest stared at Chen Feng for a while, and after seeing that he didn't plan to restrain his poor acting skills, he said, "I hope he won't become an uncontrollable variable." Chen Feng smiled and didn't continue talking. He knew very well in his heart that Loki, who was guarded by Thor, was likely to become an uncontrollable factor on the battlefield. And he needs the generation of this uncontrollable factor, because he is 100% sure that he can turn this uncontrollable into controllable. "My Lord Commander." HK-416, who had been silent in the back seat, suddenly spoke. Information from both the drone team ahead and the tactical humanoid reconnaissance team. Not far away, a huge cargo ship inserted upside down in the desert was found.